Welcome to Veronica Live, and we've got a big show today. I've got my Wingman Statesman John Salak here, and he is suffering over there with the flu. I think it's COVID too, John.
I don't get COVID, okay? I never had COVID. Haven't got it yet.
Okay, the new flu, I'm doing quotations in the air, is like COVID. I literally almost killed me in February, and I'm still suffering from the long, lingering effects of it. The 2 antibiotics ripped my stomach to pieces. So I'm still dealing with that.
Well, this is more like the trade show flu, which I usually get when I go to these conferences and stuff. And, just mainly sinus stuff. But
okay. Well, hopefully you survive. We've got a big show as usual. Florida Representative Griff Griffitts from our area will be joining us because the legislative session recently ended. We'll hear how he enjoyed it. What was he fighting for? Our governor continues to put out legislation fighting communism, and he's pro-education. And, Casey DeSantis was actually here in our county on Thursday. So we've got a lot to talk to him about. And then we have a show regular. Former Congressman Geoff is going to join us. And he has been, he's got a consulting company in D.C. And so he's been up there. And he was very anxious to join our show because it is such a cluster up in D.C. The swamp, it lives. And, the alligators eat their own. And we've got to talk to him about Speaker Johnson because now they're calling for him to be out of here. And, they're still trying to fund Israel. They're still trying to fund the Ukraine. Our border's unfunded. It's going to be quite a conversation.
It is a mess up there, I'll tell you. And then we got another congressman, another Republican's quitting. It's just... It's just amazing what's going on up there. And they also, it's all dysfunctional. It's like, it's dysfunctional because you people are dysfunctional. Look in the mirror. You want to see what dysfunction is, look in the mirror.
Right. It's just sheer madness. And,
we can't make them functional. If they can't get along, if they can't work together, how is that our fault,
Well, I don't know because they go up there and they totally forget about you and me. And
right. And they're supposed to be representing us. That's their job, is to represent us, not go up there and I don't know, kumbaya or whatever it is they want to do up there.
Kumbaya cocktail, John. Let's get it right.
Yeah,
let's get it right.
That's true. Yeah, a lot of drinking goes on up there.
I've been touting that George Santos show. I know he's not perfect, but his show on Wednesday nights on X is actually excellent. And guess who joined in again this week? It was Congressman Gates, and he was filling us in on the madness. And I'm telling you, this Congressman Gates works 24/7 for you and me. He really did, because he was briefing us on all the madness, and he's like, I've got to jump off and go work on these amendments. So I'm thankful we have a warrior there, honestly, because
when you read the news, like the Wall Street Journal, they're always criticizing Congressman Gates a lot, and most of the media is criticizing him as a showboater and stuff. And it's like, well, he wants regular order, and it's like, what's wrong with regular order? That's what the Constitution says they're supposed to do. Is there? But it's some kind of alien concept now, to have regular order. It's some kind of alien concept to actually pass a budget. Imagine that, rather than continuing resolutions.
Now that I'm an ex-goddess, I'm really trying hard over here. It's sheer madness. It's sheer madness with all of this money, and none of the money is going towards America, and we've got problems because I commented on, I comment now all the time. So I'm on over 114,000 feeds this week. So woohoo! In the beginning I was 25,000. Now I'm a 100K girl. So I've just got to get my 500 likes, and apparently you can get monetized. So we'll see what happens. I did get one of the comments. So there's haters out there, and so when you look at your analytics on X, you can see how many clicks have people looked at your profile. And so, people are looking at my profile to see who I am. I've had almost 500 visits this week. And when I commented on something, which I commented on so many things this week because there's so much in the news, somebody commented that they wish I had died of breast cancer. So you got, you got to have a tough skin. Who would do that? You know what I'm saying? Who would do that?
People that are sick, Veronica, would do that.
Well, that and then the hacking has continued with my family because, my husband's Facebook page was completely taken over our last show. So that happened. And then my daughter's Twitter, Facebook, Reddit. So I don't know. And everybody blames me, John, because I'm out there fighting the fight for America. And it got crazier, because yesterday was, let's see, hold on. We lost John. 1 second. All right, we got John back. See, I'm talking about being hacked, and then all of the it crashes. The Chinese are like, we're here. Well, I think that the one thing I definitely want to talk to you about too is that gender decision that came out of the White House yesterday. I'm trying to find Riley, the swimmer, because she posted about it. But once again, women are slapped down. And, they apparently this new decision can let men that are saying that they're women can apply for scholarships, in sports. So when is the madness going to start or stop? When is it going to stop with all of this?
Well, when people get fed up enough, when parents get fed up enough with their daughters missing out on stuff, that they're working hard for, and guys getting all the credit for, it's only one direction. I don't know if you've noticed that, but how many women that think they're men competing in men's sports have actually won anything? None. I haven't heard of one yet.
No, they haven't. And I totally had clarity. I've had clarity since last week that the reason these people are doing it is because when you are given a medal or a trophy and you're on a stage, it is a high. It is a high. It's sort of like doing a show. Why do we do a show? Why is Mick Jagger, who's 80, doing Rolling Stone gigs? Because it's a high to be out there in front of people, to win, to compete, to be on stage, to have a voice. It's definitely a high,
But I feel cheating,
it's such cheating.
There's a moral aspect. Is it because we're a society that believes in the participation trophies, is that, we condition our kids now, we don't, they can't have winners and losers.
Well, one of the videos I saw, it was a shot putter, and it was high schoolers, and it was a big shot putter that was a guy that now says he's a woman, and the shot putter girls were like, nope, we're done. And they didn't compete. And that's what it's going to take. So they're losing out. And now the White House pushes this crap forward that, I'm trying to find it. It's the gender. Sex equals gender identity. In a nutshell, men can take academic and athletic scholarships from women. Men have full access to bathrooms, locker rooms. Men could be housed in dorm rooms with women. Students and faculty must compel their speech by requiring the use of preferred pronouns. If the guidance above are ignored or even questioned, then you can be charged with harassment. What the hell? I don't need to see a man, and there's been more videos out there on X and Facebook and Instagram of men in locker rooms, wielding their junk around. I can't even take it. I cannot take it.
The one I can't figure out is there was a Planet Fitness, their story last week about Planet Fitness where they went and arrested some man that was in the woman's dressing room running around with no clothes on, and full junk exposed. Yet, 2 weeks before that, there was a Planet Fitness story where the guy was in there and the woman was in there with her daughter, and the guy's running around with the junk, and they're saying, well, there's nothing we can do about it. That's our company policy.
No.
What is it? Which one is it?
I don't know, because you're right. Because women that become men are not competing. We cannot physically, our lungs aren't as big. Our muscles aren't as developed. And I don't care if you've taken damn, suppressors, whatever, and then I saw...
When I was growing up, if a man went in a woman's bathroom and showed his junk, he'd be arrested and thrown in jail.
Exactly.
And there would be a whole lot of stuff done to him while he was in jail,
I'm here with John Salak, Vice Statesman and Wingman this morning, and we've got a big show on Veronica Live, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Veronica Live, and we are here with a show regular. It's been a little while since he's joined me, but I know he has lots to share. Representative Griff Griffitts, he's been fighting the fight in Tallahassee. Welcome back, Representative Griffitts.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, so the session just wrapped, and I wanted to talk to you about all this sausage making because, I went to Tallahassee twice in January, and I'm still recovering from it.
Right?
It was horrible. So I don't know if I want to go back.
Process. It's politics is a blood sport, and I don't think people recognize it. It really is. There's I guess our forefathers knew it best that thank goodness we're only there for 60 days because you sure don't want a bunch of us up there for a long period of time because you could sure make up a bunch of dumb rules and, place some burdens on the state. So it's good we're only there for 60 days and then they send us home. But the sausage making is very ugly.
Oh, it was horrible.
The hours and time, it's very time consuming. It's really important to build relationships while you're there. If you think that you're the firebrand that's going to go up there and bang on the desk and change everything, you are sadly mistaken. It is just not that way. They want people who, conduct themselves. There's pride in the institution of the House for sure. And the senior members want to make sure that that institution remains in some sort of historical fashion. And it's been that way a long time, and it's really hard to figure it out. It is very hard to get stuff across the finish line, really, really hard. And even when you do get it across the finish line, sometimes you might be concerned with the finished product because you're not sure how it actually turned out because of so many amendments in the process. The committee stops, and so that you can't fall in love with a bill. They tell you that early on. If you get up there and there's something going through and you don't like it, you can surely withdraw it. You can let it die. You can do all those number of things as a sponsor to make sure your name's not attached to some piece of crappy legislation, really.
Well, Griff, I'm just curious, is it where you have one person that can stop a bill? Is that good? A good thing?
I mean, on the Senate side, it really can account to that. There's power and leadership in ways that are really, people don't have any idea how much power is swayed in certain areas. It kind of runs downhill, and if leadership chooses one path or the other, or decides that this is not a priority for their leadership, then they can sure make it difficult. We saw in the last session where there was a number of bills that the House heard that the Senate had no sponsors. The president had clearly indicated that there was not going to be any hearings or committees on these bills. Yet the House, we went through the motions. We did, we were hoping maybe some way along the line they can pick it up and run with it, but none of that ever happened. And so there's a constant struggle, I think, at times with a lot of the more conservative bills. This was session number 2. Session number 1, we did a lot of the, gun control, abortions, pronouns, all those things that were probably a little more high topic and probably for a little more critical for people. And so when this session came around, I think you had a speaker. We had a governor who wasn't engaged, obviously. He was off running for president. We had a speaker who was on his way out, a president of the Senate who is on her way out. They're in their last years. And so their probably priorities are changing in how they want to leave, part of their legacy. And so that probably dictates in how they're going to run their show as well. But yeah, it's very hard. If you have people that are blocking it, it can make it difficult. A great example is in Pinellas County, their transit authority. We run a lot of local bills up there. Local bills are brought to us, at the delegation level. So if Bay County wanted a local bill, or Panama City Beach or something, and they came to the delegation, being me and Jay Trumbull, which the greatest thing ever is to have a delegation meeting, which is just you and your friend and your Senate counterpart. These delegate meetings in South Florida, they're 12, 15 members.
Yep.
both parties, everybody's lined up, everybody's fighting over things. And Pinellas County wanted a local bill which separated their transit authority for a litany of reasons, and it was all very logical and made plenty of sense. Went all the way through the House committee. Every House committee it went through, no problem. Voted, I think, unanimous on every House bill. The Senate kills it because the one Senate member, Democratic Senate member from down there that didn't like it, on their delegation rules, it basically says if one senator doesn't like it, they can kill the bill.
Oh,
so
gosh.
It never even got heard on the Senate side. So there are rules in place. Thankfully, our rules don't say that. But there are rules in place that can make things super challenging. Even if you think you got it across the finish line, just when you think you might have it figured out, you don't.
Well, I guess what I learned from Griff was I didn't realize when it came to a bill, you really did need a senator and you had to have a representative to push that forward. So I thought you could just run with it on your own. And I was surprised by that.
If you, for instance, let's just say gun control, for example. If a freshman walks in and says, I'm going to run the permitless carry last year, they're never going to hand that to a freshman legislator. They're going to hand that to a guy that's senior level, who's been through the battles of committees, knows how the questions are going to be, knows how to go out and kind of work the bill as well, which essentially means, lobby the bill. You go talk to when you're running a bill, you go talk to every member on every committee about your bill. You're lobbying your bill yourself to try to make sure that when you get it to the committee hearing, there's no questions. It just sails through. And because that's really the hard part. Once it makes it to the House floor, at that point, it's going to pass. In most cases, it's going to pass. And it's really a lot of work. And if you don't have those relationships built, they're not going to talk to you about your bill. It doesn't matter what idea it is. And if leadership doesn't bless it, it doesn't matter. It's not going anywhere. You have to have those relationships.
Is that good though? I mean, and I take that in the context that we've had some bad legislation passed because of the way it worked. And I'll go back to the septic tank bill, which you may recall from several years ago. Yeah. And that was basically a South Florida bill. And I talked to the Senate president about that and was told this was done as a favor to a retiring senator. That was his pet bill for all these years. It's never been passed. Yeah. And they passed it for him.
Oh, my gosh.
Sure. Listen, what I will tell you is that we live in the greatest part of the state, and we are so blessed to be in the Panhandle because all the weird, dumb rules that we create at the state level usually come out of South Florida. And it's because of the just general population, I think, is so dense. And there's just some bad actors. And those bad actors make the state, as my good friend Representative General Maney from Okaloosa County, he said sometimes the state has to use an 800-mile long screwdriver to tighten the screws because and I was like, what a great example and an analogy to recognize that we have to do that sometimes, and we all live under this huge screwdriver that sometimes a really small segment of people create, but the state steps in and preempts and slaps and has the ability to do it. And I remember Speaker Bentz telling me one of his greatest accomplishments was passing less laws than he did the year before. And I think limited government is a testament to that. And I feel like sometimes we get up there and we try to create sometimes some forms of bigger government. And it's only big government if it's not your government, right? And it's laughable to me. Sometimes I'm like, we're supposed to be the freest, most conservative state in the union. And here we are. Sometimes we're very reactionary. The state's real reactionary. We'll jump off into something real quick. And then a year or so later, we got to go back and revisit it because we were too quick to judge or something. But that's the beauty of this Florida state legislature. That's why I guess there's 160 of us up there making the rules.
So Griff, I wanted to.
Types.
Well, I'm still traumatized by trying to go up and down an elevator because that was literally impossible in the Capitol building.
You just about have to have an engineering degree to work those elevators.
It was horrific. But what are some of the wins that you think came out of this legislative session that you're so proud of?
Well, I think we did a lot of cool things, stuff that I think we would find relevant here locally. The squatters bill, we were way ahead of the national. Yeah, we were way ahead of the national media on that. We were working on that for actually the last two sessions, but finally got it signed by the governor this year, and that's a great thing. I worked on expanding the footprint of Space Florida to include Tyndall and Homestead. We are obviously the base of the future, right? And so we have lots of untouched land, and Space Florida's expansion. It's amazing how much goes on at the Cape. I don't think people recognize how much commercial space is actually in the footprint of Florida. They're doing launches about every 10 or 12 days down there. So they wanted to incorporate Tyndall, and that Tyndall was very receptive. And so that was fun. That was a really fun one to run. And then the governor signed a huge transportation bill, which is going to streamline and move projects that were 20 and 30 years down the road to 10-year plans or 5-year plans, which will benefit our area greatly. And then, of course, the big one was probably the HB3, which was the social media bill, which wins or losses, that one, I think, for the speaker was probably his greatest priority with his young children. I think he's trying to protect children essentially from the ills of social media. It's not the content, it's not those things, it's the addictive features that those platforms produce for children. And I think that was the push to get that signed. And when the HB1 came out and it was a little concerns for constitutionality, that was where the negotiations started, and HB3 was produced, and that's kind of what passed both the House and the Senate. The governor signed it, and so now it will soon take effect. I'm sure challenged in the courts at some level, but we will see the results of that, I think, soon.
It was amazing on that because people don't understand these companies like Facebook and Instagram, and they actually employ psychologists that look at this stuff and say, how do we keep people pushing the button, basically? It's
no, exactly right. It's really scary. It's akin to a slot machine. When you're pushing the button to just hit that slot machine number over and over again to reset it. It's the same thing with your phone. The features that releases these dopamine type, releases in your brain. And for children, it's much worse. The statistics that go with bullying, that go with exploitation of children, sexual trafficking in social media is through the roof. It's unbelievable where it starts, and it starts in social media. And the Speaker of the House has used a great example over and over again, because he is our age, and he said, when I was growing up and you had a bully, when you left school, you never had to deal with the bully. With social media, the bully never leaves the house. It's in your home with you. And I think that's a great example for people who want to protect their children, especially 14 and under, about just the ills that social media can cause. And you don't always know what your kids are doing on that phone. I know most parents are doing much better with monitoring, and you can limit the social media time and even internet time, but it's still very hard.
So I wanted to ask you, Griff, the First Lady, Casey DeSantis, was here Thursday, and I saw that you got to meet with her, and she was here pushing a new resiliency Florida, which it says it's first in the nation initiative focused on reframing mental health education to focus on building resiliency skills, grit, perseverance, gratitude, personal responsibility, decision-making, mentorship, self-awareness, problem-solving, empathy, citizenship, and honesty. So what were your takeaways from her visit here at Mosley High School?
Yeah, she's fascinating. She's really, like you say, putting parents in charge, empowering the family. And so this resiliency project, I think she's trying, there's a rebranding of this we all talked about the mental health, especially here in our part of the world after Hurricane Michael, right? It went to the mental health struggles of our children. And then after COVID, it just times 10 the mental health issues. And so now they're trying to build this program that just talks about the resiliency of, like, look, life is not easy. There are going to be struggles. But here at the end of the day, these are some of the things, these challenges that build you, the character. And so they're having all these. She brought down with her the other day the Secretary of the Florida Lottery, John Davis, played football at Florida State, was recruited by Notre Dame, didn't get recruited to go play in the pros, tried to go to the Canadian Football League and failed, just failure. But just the lessons he was taught while being raised in a single home in Pahokee, Florida, just he didn't have it easy. And then you have Senator, Corey Simon over here, who's got the same stories. These guys they make you want to challenge yourself, and they're building that into the program while at the same time you're bringing parents and grandparents into the schools and training them how to do this, and there's money to pay them. And so hopefully you'll bring these families back into the educational component of their kids now as we know, we have to, and I think we got a great superintendent. I think we have to improve our education here in Bay County to get it to a level where, top 10 in the state.
So, Griff, I made the mistake of watching the Florida Channel debate on the don't get too close to the police bill.
He's been on Dayquil with his illness.
In a jail cell or something.
I don't know why I was intrigued. I guess because I was listening to the debate and I was trying to understand. The Democrats were pretty much easy to understand, but it was mainly 4 or 5 black Democrat women, and they were just against this thing every which way to sunset.
There are 2 or 3 in particular that speak on every issue. Right? They just don't like anything. And they are in reality, I don't think they're very popular amongst their own party members. I know in particular a couple are not, because when after October 7th and we had our special session on funding for Jewish day schools and things like that for security measures, the solidarity amongst the Jewish delegation, which is very strong in Tallahassee, is they bind together, and they were very, very tight. And obviously we were all surrounding them. Well, there's a couple in their party that were not. And just like the Congress, there's a couple. And I just will tell you that caucus is a big thing up there. And when you do something like that, you show who you are, and those people they'll find somebody to run against you, and they'll primary you. And if I'm not mistaken, I think one of those 2 is being primaried. And you just can't act like that. But there are a few that just love to speak on every issue. I remember arguing my first session. We were debating over the SNAP cards, the let's call it the free meal cards or whatever that the government hands out. And we were debating on whether to take soda or soft drinks off the ability for them to buy them, because they were just going into convenience stores and buying, $4 drinks. And we debated for 2 hours, I think, on the ability for them to go buy soft drinks on that. And I remember thinking, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, what are we really? This is a thing. But it is the process, and it's very calculated. And thankfully, we're in the supermajority, because we can control the debate as best we can. But we do give them the opportunity to argue.
And I will agree. Everybody had a chance to have their say. I think that was Representative Fine was the one running that bill, if I remember right. And he was almost contemptuous of some of the
Representative Fine is he's running for Senate. Representative Fine, Randy Fine, is one of the smartest, if not the most gifted speaker in the Florida House. His debate skills are unbelievable. However, Randy Senator Fine, soon to be Senator Fine, Randy has a really good way of making people angry at him when he's debating. And so they get mad at Randy.
That was pretty evident,
Randy relishes it. Randy's a very good guy and a
you
very
can see
good,
the contempt in his comments.
Yeah, and especially those that spoke against after the Jewish stuff. There's one or two in particular that I was just speaking about that Randy doesn't care if he makes them mad, and I think he personally kind of enjoys it sometimes. And but Randy is a very gifted speaker. Randy is a very passionate guy. Randy is a guy who is doing everything for the right reasons, I believe. And Randy is going to do it his way. And,
So, Griff,
Randy will be a good senator.
Reflecting back, John and I we're such pro-lifers, and the Second Amendment we're always fighting for. What were your feelings on that after this session? Florida kind of leads the way in a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, and it looks like we're all going to get a vote on it in November. I'm not so sure. I hadn't read the language in its entirety, but I think the Second Amendment, I'm sorry. We're going to have to vote in November on abortion and marijuana, which are going to be the two largest issues we're going to hear about in the future session. This last session, the House ran the gun control bill where you could purchase a long gun if you were 18. And it didn't have its Senate counterpart. The president had spoken prior to us even hearing it that they were not going to entertain it. But we did it, because I think the House thought it was right.
Yay. That's awesome.
I think we're just maybe a little bit more conservative body right now. The Senate is different. I mean, there's only 40, and it's small. If you walk around the Senate, you walked around the House, Veronica, and you saw the bumblebee. It's like a beehive, is what I call it. Right? There's just people everywhere. We're bumping off each other. And then you go to the other side, and it's what I call like a library or a mausoleum. Quiet. There's very few people, and everybody's because there's so few. But there's a lot of us, and so I think we operate a little differently. And we have a very, very conservative House. I mean, I have 30 Republican members in my class, and I have some members that are. Barney Jacques, who's a first-generation, American from Haiti, who is as conservative as you've ever seen. Danny Alvarez. We've got Brad Yeager, Adam Anderson, myself, Doc Rudman, Shane Abbott. We've got people that they're just not going to bend. We're just who we are, and we're just going to stick together and do our thing.
And what's the legislation on the marijuana? Is that to legalize it in Florida this fall?
Yeah, that's what it's going on the ballot in November.
Okay.
I
hope that's no. Please no. Okay.
It's got to get 60%. It's got to get 60% for the voters to approve it. I don't know.
Okay.
I saw a poll yesterday that it was below that, which let's just hope it sticks that way. I think if the medical part's just working fine, I guess let's just leave that alone. The abortion issue, I think what it's going to do is bring up the issue of where the timeline falls. I think it's going to leave it up to the states probably to dictate where it goes. Is it 15 weeks? Is it not at all? Is it? I don't know. Yeah.
Well, so we appreciate you fighting that.
That South Florida issue is going to be that South Florida issue will dominate that vote, I imagine, just south of Orlando.
Right.
So Griff, it's good to see that Bay County's finally getting back to what I'll call sort of normal. We've heard the Gulf Coast Air Show is going to be in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's great.
And then this coming week, there's a new fixed-based operator opening up at the airport, Southern Sky Aviation.
Yeah.
And I stopped by there. I think if I remember right, the general manager told me they spent $34 million on that facility, and it is. First class.
And he's coming on next week. I can't wait to talk to him about that.
That's going to, the amount of, I don't think people understand the amount of jets that fly in here during the summer.
A lot.
just to come to our Gulf Coast, and now with all the issues going on in Walton County with access to the beach and things like that, I just think it paints a better picture over here for us for tourism for the future.
Yeah, I kind of equated our jet traffic here. I used to go skiing in Aspen at Christmas time, and you go to Aspen Airport. There's jets everywhere, and our airport looks like that. It really does on some of the holiday weekends. There's so many jets out there.
It really does. Yeah, no, it's like probably like the Masters tournament, right, where the jets fly in for the weekend and then they fly out. But you could drive out to those, especially with that new one coming in. It's going to put pressure on the other guy who's been here. It makes everybody work harder, and they'll be out there aggressively selling jet fuel and parking planes. That's good for all of us here.
So Griff, to wrap it up, we love having you back because you're part of the Veronica Live family here. What do you want to tell the world? Your takeaways and the future of the next legislative session.
Wow. Well. Yeah, and the thing is, it's not till March. It's a long time from now. We've got a lot of work to do over the summer. First off, my office is always open, third floor of the Government Center, 840 West 11th Street. If anybody ever needs anything, they can always reach out to Shanta and Ashton there. They can help, and we can set up meetings and put you in contact with the people if we can help at all. But I would just say that the future of Florida is bright. We are in the greatest state. We have really, really good leadership, aside from sausage making, which maybe there's some sense to all this, but it is very.
I'm still scared.
It makes you want to bang your head against the table. But at the end of the day, we run a balanced budget. Our budget projections are great. We have tons of reserves. The governor is good to us and our part of the world, always has been. I think we're going to have great years ahead with Speaker Perez as the next speaker. And Matt, it's just time to go to work. It's if there's things that we can do at the state that can benefit the people of Bay County or District 6 or even the state as a whole, come see me. Let's talk. I'm game and open. There's going to be a lot of conversation about insurance, obviously, in the next session there. That's I saw Patronus the other day, as you did, Veronica, and he mentioned that there's a company actually going for a rate reduction right now. So let's hope that's the first start of that slippery slope that we all talk about, and everybody will start asking for rate reductions, and then we can see some progress in the next few years with insurance. And I think you'll continue to see that push on through, as well as a lot of discussion on how to figure out the crisis of citizens and what do we do with citizens insurance.
Well, wonderful. And I thank you, too, because we did have a billionaire come into our area, and I ran the ceremony for the $50 million. He built this beautiful condos for people here. Right. So thanks for coming out to that. And that shows our growth, too, in Florida. $50 million in our little backyard. But thanks, and we'll have you back. And we've been talking with Representative Griff Griffitts, and we'll be right back on Veronica Live. Welcome back to Veronica Live, and we're here with a Veronica Live regular, and we have former Congressman Geoff Davis from Kentucky joining us, and you are the managing partner of Republic Consulting. That just sounds so strong, Congressman, and you've actually been up in the swamp this week, so do tell what is going on. John and I have so many questions for you because the alligators are eating their own up there, so we've got to hear from you.
Yeah, one of those alligators represents your congressional district, too. So it's.
I'm not a fan of our alligator, so I came up with a slogan last week that I'm done with Congressman Dunn. So I just don't feel like he's fighting for me, but you'll have to tell me if I'm wrong.
I think he's referring to the other one.
Oh, okay.
Neil is actually understands the value of institutions, and
okay.
No, I'm talking about Mr. Gates, who continues to demonstrate a lack of character and strategic thought in terms of actually helping the country versus burnishing his personal reputation. But I'd say from my time there, the one thing that was, fascinating to see was, especially in the Republican conference, which the overwhelming number of members are pragmatic. They really resent what's being done by this group of about 15 to 20 members. And seeing the speaker, who I have to commend for having both the moral courage and recognizing the urgency of the hour to move forward, he's not going to let a small handful of members of the Congress, thwart the will of what the majority of Americans want, but also what the right thing to do is. And he's, moved these bills in regular order, which was, some of the bomb throwers' requests, although they wanted to create, other constraints to passing, legislation that would have overwhelming support. But I think that what was unprecedented was the first time I've seen it, was Democrats came to bat yesterday on the Rules Committee, and then they passed overwhelmingly on the floor to begin debate on these pieces of legislation. And so from that standpoint, it's a positive. I think the one thing to say about this, having seen 6 rules be defeated, that means that this tiny little group, including a couple of members of the Rules Committee, essentially want to shut the Congress down, effectively empowering the executive branch to do what they want, and effectively empowering the minority too, by essentially having a political temper tantrum. And I'm glad they're going to move this legislation. I have 2 sons on active duty in the Army who are quite deployable because of what they do, and I don't see any need for them to be projected into a future conflict that we could have solved easily in advance. And from a historic perspective, that's positive. So it's going to be a very tough remaining Congress because of these ne'er-do-wells. And I think that what a lot of them don't understand, although I know several of them would revel in this, is they're going to put the Republicans in the minority in the House if they keep these antics up. And I know several that just don't care. For them, it's more airtime on TV, and they'll continue with their records of not passing any legislation.
Yeah, that's the part that really surprises me is there's no plan. When I heard Marjorie Taylor Greene, was going to call for the speaker, a vote of confidence, and I'm like, why are you doing this? There's no plan. This is insane. It's like, okay, so you remove the speaker again. Now what? And they don't seem to think this stuff through. Is it just they want the headlines for now? And the thing that really torqued me off about Marjorie Taylor Greene's actions was she took the news cycle off the Democrat side, which was really negative on Biden, and then focused it back on the Republicans again. As far as the chaos goes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
So, is it just really they're that bad? I mean, they're that vain. Is that what it is?
I'll put it into this context. I mean, I was talking with several members and also with senior staff who I've known for a long time on just some of our technical defense work that I was doing this week. And kind of the consensus is that what's happened in the last week or two would have been unconscionable when I was in Congress. And the point was that you didn't move to vacate your speaker when that speaker had overwhelming support. I've been through numerous leadership elections, and if I voted, which I did in a couple of cases, for the future member of leadership who didn't win, I didn't turn around and try to subvert the effort. We went to the House floor and we supported that member for speaker, or we supported that member for leader, understanding that it's a team sport. And alliances and coalitions and teamwork is quite necessary to pass legislation. And it shows a lack of foresight. But I'll put this into an easier context than that. I don't think there's a lot of deep psychology involved beyond a little sociopathic narcissism. But the one thing I would say is this. I used to take a psychologist flying with me back in the day. This is like 35 years ago. And we got to talking because we had, both grown up in pretty tough backgrounds in terms of, what our childhoods were like. And I finally asked him his perspective as we're, boring a hole in the sky flying. And he asked me this question. He said, "Do you know what the problem is? Or do you know how to understand the irrational mind?" And I was expecting some great, deep, philosophical perspective. And I said, "No, what's the secret to understanding the irrational mind?" He said, "You can't. It's irrational." And the focus being that a lot of people who act like this are essentially creatures of their id. It's impulsive. And I think that if you look, I believe in a holistic view of life. And I think if you step back and look at these individuals holistically, you will see the same kind of irrational dysfunction in their personal lives. And in the case of Mr. Gates, in the case of, Mrs. Green, in the case of a number of others of this ilk, you in fact see this reflected in what they're like off camera. And, and it's sad, but it also, our republic is designed for the people in a congressional district to make the decision on who will be their representative. And several of these districts have fallen for the emotional, the endorphin high you get from somebody who's complaining. They elect somebody who goes in, who immediately makes enemies on all sides and can't get anything done and can't effectively represent their constituents or the tax dollars that could come to their district to strengthen or to focus on those district priorities. But, I viewed it this way when we dealt with folks like that, as if you don't want to take advantage of the opportunities to serve your constituents more effectively. That accrues more opportunity for me. And, but they are what they are. I think the heartening sign, though, is that Mike Johnson, it reminds me of an old Ranger School thing when the Ranger instructor would say, "What are you going to do now, Ranger, after you've been up for 3 days straight and you're hungry and tired and have a bunch of zombies that you're trying to lead on the patrol?" And you make a decision and, pull up your bootstraps and go for it. And I think that what we're seeing in the speaker is he's getting legs. And I can't tell you, as we talked about 7 weeks ago, he was briefed in great detail on what's actually happening in the occupied areas, what the Russians are doing. He was shown evidence that he could evaluate on his own, unbiased. And he saw, as a matter of fact, the level of not only the atrocities that the Russians commit on a daily basis and the war crimes they commit, but he also saw firsthand evidence and also was able to speak with people firsthand who were evangelical Christians, Baptists, Catholics, others who, non-Russian Orthodox who had been assaulted, had atrocities committed on them by the Russians, as well as their churches being closed and burned. So I think it brought the conflict, into reality for him. And like me, he has a son that's about to go into the military this summer, starting at the Naval Academy. And so, I think practicality and reality reign. And that's the biggest challenge right now in Washington, is to govern based on reality, not emotion.
Yeah, the interview we had with Colonel Sam Hartwell, retired, and you have that linked on your LinkedIn page. Listen to that. If people would listen to that, they would understand the gravity of what's going on in Ukraine. And I just don't get it. And that it takes. And the other thing I was surprised at this week is all of a sudden bipartisanship. The Democrats are actually going to vote for something that the Republican leader has put out. And it's and they were all surprised. It's like, wow, we got 150. I think it's 155 Democrats to vote yes. With the Republicans to pass that package. And everybody's shocked, the Democrats are like, wait a minute, we have a Democrat president that's over here saying we need to pass this. We have a Democrat Senate leader saying we need to pass this, and then the House Democrats do nothing. It's like, I know there's politics, and it's, at the end of the day, though, you got to do something.
But you're correct. I mean, this is, inaction is a choice, too. And inaction, I think part of the problem with Ukraine is much of the press has treated it with a degree of moral equivalency. And the other thing that's quite dangerous, and I mentioned this at the end of February when I was on the show. Fortunately, now the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, Mike Turner, has come out. The chairman of Foreign Affairs, Mike McCall, has come out and stated the reality that we've been talking about for many months is that a lot of these members who categorically oppose any assistance to Ukraine and become apologists for Russia, whether it's a member of Congress or whether it's a Tucker Carlson or somebody of that ilk, they're all effectively using the talking points that are generated by the former Yevgeny Prigozhin's Internet Research Group, the military GRU intelligence organization, or the State Security Bureau, the FSB, and we're being bombarded with this information. And the way you get people to pick that up is tell them something that scratches an itch that they have, and they'll propagate it. And that's exactly what's happening. So, many of the people who are the opponents of Ukraine aid, like Mr. Gates, again, who likes to traffic in untruths as part of his persona, is making all these statements about Ukraine when, in fact, the reality is he is effectively a mouthpiece for the Russian government. Marjorie Taylor Greene is in the same place, and it pains me to say that, speaking of a fellow American, but he sits on the Armed Services Committee. He should know better. But he, like some members of that ilk, will receive the classified information that's actually objective and factual, and it's given by intelligence professionals like Sam Hartwell, who you've had on the show, who are fairly dispassionate when it comes to looking at reality. It's about capabilities, not intent. What's actually happening versus what I want to believe is happening, and then he goes out and spouts that anyway, and it's creating a lack of institutional confidence among Americans, and candidly, that kind of mutual distrust only helps our adversaries.
Well, how do you get through? And here's the problem I have. I'm against the funding. It's not because I don't think the Ukrainians need it. It's because we don't want them to win. The United States does not have the will to tell the Ukrainians, we're going to give you what you need to defeat the Soviets. And we're doing the exact same thing in Israel. We're saying, you can't win over Hamas. But the Israelis are saying, go do yourself, because we're not going to stop until Hamas is gone, and Hezbollah, if that's what it takes, because we're going to protect and defend ourselves. And so we're not helping. It's and this is what I was talking to Sam about. To me, it's almost immoral to give them more money to continue the slaughter, as opposed to giving them money and weapons to win. And if we don't give them things like ATACMS, why won't we give it to them? Why do we keep dragging our feet on helping them win?
I don't think there's. I'll put it in this context. Anthony Blinken, who's sort of a professional staff officer and think tank person through his time in his D.C. career, but Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, has consistently supported giving the full package to Ukraine since March of 2022, and I would say the two weak links in this process are the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, who's candidly, I think he's a timid person, not in the sense of if you sat down and meet with him, but he's one of those, folks, again, coming from this very academic background, who is over-analyzing the associated risks and not stepping back and thinking about the real second and third order effects that could be quite dangerous. And the message has been so muddied because of things that former President Trump has said, various public figures have said, people in the news who are, essentially sharing this, this Russian propaganda. The story on the ground is very different. It's very grave right now, but we can turn that tide by giving them those resources very quickly. The Russian military, they can produce a lot of bodies, but they don't have a lot of trained soldiers. And as we reinvigorate their air defense capability, as we reinvigorate their artillery capability, supporting with, larger caliber munitions, you'll begin to see further degradation of the Russians right now. I mean, there's a concern over an assault on Kharkiv that's quite real, but the Russians don't have the ability to conduct what we would, call in our Western military's true firing maneuver. Their mechanized forces don't have those capabilities. And that just because of both skill, maintenance, the ability to bring sustainment, supplies up to the front, and it's a World War I war of attrition with some high technology at the moment. That can change dramatically with that infusion of additional ordnance. And, at the end of the day, it's in our interest not to have an aggressive Russia empowered sitting on all of the borders because they've made their intentions, quite known, and it would likely lead to a very bloody war. No different than the situation in 1938 and 39. And so, I think we're doing the right thing, get these resources to them. And I think the NATO countries, to their credit, are waking up to the gravity of what's going on and taking steps internally. Several countries have committed large amounts of cash to reinvigorating their munitions industries, developing weapon systems, and supporting that logistics and supply chain.
So my question, Congressman, is 2 weeks ago, Secretary Blinken said that Ukraine was going to be joining NATO, and that was sort of Putin's red line. He didn't want that would cause World War III. So what were you thinking when this happened, and do you think this is going to be a catalyst to push us to a World War III, or is this a great endeavor to have them join NATO?
Well, here's messages are exchanged for various reasons to be received by different audiences for different reasons. And I felt that for many years, this goes back to the 2008 timeframe when I was on the Hill, that membership of Georgia, membership of Ukraine in NATO were highly unlikely. I still feel that way today until there's some stasis and real peace. However, Ukraine can receive security guarantees in the long run. But here's the question is, if somebody tells you, and let's put this into a personal context, Veronica, somebody tells you and your husband that that if you cut your grass, that if you trim the hedge next to their house that belongs to you, that's provocation for them to attack you. In the free state of Florida, you would probably stand your ground and prevent that neighbor from, you would call his bluff. And I think if we look at I think one of the things in these seemingly complex international issues, getting behind all the crazy emotional rhetoric, you can take the same principles that apply there and apply them in a personal context in your neighborhood, in your family, among colleagues or in communities, and you see how these things work. And bullies are only stopped when someone chooses to ignore their rhetoric and deal with the inevitable. And usually the bully has to shrink up and go away. And one of the dirty open secrets is Putin knows, for example, that if he were to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine or toward the West, that his country would cease to exist, period. And, when you're don't believe in anything in the hereafter and it's all about what you can have now, that's kind of a self-defeating ideology for what legacy that he would want. And thus we've seen him back down continually, going all the way back to 2014. And again, the fragility in Russia, I don't see the Russian people as a core walking away from this, because they have a unique worldview that's been developed over centuries, and particularly with the infusion of this propaganda. But if you take a look at it at a deeper level, he's always only gone over those red lines if he sees that there's going to be no response. And I think there is a clear understanding that there will be a response. And Poland I can tell you this from having been in Europe recently, I mean, Poland is preparing for war. The Baltics are preparing for war. Romania is preparing for war at an accelerated pace. Norway, Sweden, and Finland are all preparing for war. And, if you want to maintain, as the old saying goes, if you want peace, prepare for war. And, you let your adversary know the very high and painful price that they're going to pay if they initiate hostilities. And so the closer folks are to this struggle, they see the reality of it. I saw that firsthand up near the Russian border in January. And it's the way to handle this, because the Russian people privately, those who actually know what's going on, can't say anything any longer. The best thing that we can do is create a situation that lets them understand where they are, and regardless of what they say publicly, their actions are what matter. And eventually, if they're not stopped, they're going to continue grinding this down. Now, here's the flip side, because Russia is a demographically dying country. He's essentially wiping out a generation. The official statement they released on 50,000 casualties or deaths, combat deaths in the last 2 years, is fallacious. It's the best information that I've seen from multiple sources. It's somewhere north of 300, maybe 350,000 dead.
So sad, so tragic. But now you've said that all. Well, wait a second, John. Congressman, you said all these countries are preparing for war. I'm into deterrence, of course, but should Americans be scared when we hear that?
No, I go back to the situation at the height of the Cold War when I was a young Army officer. I remember a talk by a battalion commander. My battalion commander, actually, he was just a truly great warrior, great Christian, great person, great intellect. And I had just talked to a bunch of the soldiers, and we gave the gung ho, rah rah, let's eat broken glass and do all the things that we do as soldiers. And I was young and immature and about 6 weeks out of Ranger School when I had made those comments, and then I stood back and let the man with the combat tours stand up and. Without the rousing emotion, and he made the statement, "Men, I know you wonder why we're training so hard and we're focusing so much on the potential mission that we have to defend our nation against communism." And he used those terms very openly. And he said, the reason that we train so hard and the reason that we have to have the strongest army in the world is if we truly have that, that will be the thing that maintains the peace. And he was absolutely correct. And you can time the weakness of our international security, whether by fault or conscious, well-meant choice. When we begin the massive drawdown of our forces and also the defense industrial base, that was happening simultaneously as these pluralistic threats were beginning to multiply in the mid to late 1990s.
Yeah, and I agree 100% with you on that fact. I'm just curious what the numbers of dead, in the Ukrainian war so far. It's such a difference between Israel, and if you believe the Hamas numbers of 30,000 being killed, which I don't believe. Why is it that we've got this thing with Hamas and everybody in the country protesting genocide in Gaza, and yet what goes on in Ukraine and Russia is almost ignored? I mean, what is it about people that's going on here?
Well, I would say the one difference in politics and advertising, you may have heard the term weight of message. The idea, if I can get my message out at 2 or 3 times the rate that you can, the probability is very high that my message will be accepted. I mean, all things being equal. We've had literally 2-3 generations of news coverage around Israel that's branded very deeply with different perspectives over time. But people really haven't paid attention to Eastern Europe since the Cold War. And even then, it wasn't seen as the unique individual cultures and people groups that had been coerced to make up the Soviet Union. We saw it essentially as a blob, as a nation. And so, and they saw us that way too, frankly. And I think that's a piece of the challenge is people were simply ignorant of it. I mean, how many people before 9/11 could pick out Kabul, Afghanistan on a map?
That's so true.
Any number of other places. They have lives. They're taking their kids to, the soccer and Little League and, going to work and going to church and, functioning in their communities. When 9/11 presented itself, and suddenly everybody knew where these various places were, like Kandahar and places like that. So I think it's an awareness issue, and frankly, you bring into this mix the issue of faith in God, whether it's Christian or Judaism or Islam, and you incite further passions, hopefully positively, and respectfully, but you have all of that's been swirling around for, all of our lifetimes in that part of the world. I can remember as a freshman in high school, or actually a sophomore in high school, being glued to the TV every night and reading everything I could in October 1973 during that war. And that was when I became aware of that country and began studying the region and the issues and, Arabic issues and all of that. So it didn't take any study or education. The only reason I know about the region around the Donbass, eastern Ukraine, southern Russia in that area is I did an honors paper at West Point when I was a senior on small unit actions fighting in the Dnieper River Basin. So I kind of knew a number of these towns by rote when all of this happened, but it was still shocking to see it come to pass. And, looking back impassively, Putin had no idea the quality of his armed forces. He's essentially killed the entire army that went there 2 years ago. And they have adapted in certain areas. They've adapted in technologies. But at the same time, when the Ukrainians are fighting back, and this is the strange mixed messages, this is the Jake Sullivan and Joe Biden piece of it that come in, how dare they tell the Ukrainian government not to strike oil refineries in Russia proper? And they've hit a significant percentage of refineries to hinder operations over there, and they were concerned about the price of oil in the United States. To me, that's a market opportunity where the president could simply step up and say, we will make up the difference because we're now the largest oil and gas producer in the world. And thank you, environmental left, but we have a country to keep together and an economy to keep together. And we're going to produce gas and we're going to produce oil, and we're going to use our industrial might and leverage to maintain our national security and the security of our allies.
But what do we do, though? We cancel natural gas permits for exports, and, we try to shut down oil production.
I'm saying
it's all crazy.
The president's he's throwing a fig leaf to the environmental left that can't do math and doesn't understand economics because they were taking strange courses in their university days. You look at the reality of it. The reality of it is we need to use that infrastructure until other alternatives like nuclear energy get re-socialized and can be sustainable in the long run. But the reality is we have adversaries who don't care about that any more than the contradictory policies that have been announced on electric vehicles, and their stated number one adversary, the People's Republic of China, currently controls 98% of all the battery graphite that goes in every lithium-ion battery from cars to cell phones in the United States. That would, to me, suggest that you should reevaluate your strategic intent and what you're seeking to accomplish, as opposed to pandering to a particular interest group.
I want to transition a little bit to Israel because we can talk to you all day, Congressman, because you're so amazing and worldly. But are you frustrated? I mean, what are your thoughts this week with Israel stepping up and trying to take out stuff in Iran? And then I was very impressed with Iran sends all these drones, and I guess Saudis and Jordan and Israel were able to take out 99% of these, lawnmowers flying in the air, which, drone warfare is it's come to fruition, the last few years. So I just wanted your thoughts on Israel and Iran and this kind of warfare, and then how does Israel move forward? I was talking with somebody that's Jewish, and he was saying he still wants a two-state, he wants it to be a two-state place over there. And I was kind of surprised. So all of your thoughts on that.
Well, let's start with the tactical situation, the operational situation first, and we could get back to the territorial politics. Mm-hmm. Iran was, after the strike, and I personally believe that when Netanyahu, who would have had to have approved that strike on the Iranian embassy in Damascus, mm-hmm. The Mossad and Shin Bet are generally quite competent intelligence organizations, as we saw in 10/7. 9/11, no intelligence organization is perfect, but they generally do very creditable work. And in this particular case, they knew exactly what the likely second and third order consequences were going to be by attacking the embassy. The problem diplomatically in doing that is you remove, and I can understand arguments on all sides of this, but I'm just going to state it as a norm in international affairs. If you strike the sovereign territory of an embassy, that's like striking sovereign territory. And decisions then need to be made in terms of how you're going to handle the second and third order effects of that. We've had embassy attacks in the past and, avoided, going into a total war situation as a result of that. So when they made that decision, they knew that there was going to be an Iranian reaction. There had to be, because politically what it created was a challenge for what I'd consider an already fragile, clerical leadership establishment in Iran, and demanding action to a point. I saw a meme last Thursday that was an Iranian gentleman addressing Grand Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and it was in Farsi, but it was him handing a pair of testicles to the Ayatollah. Basically asking if he needed that to defend the country's honor. And what that should tell you.
Were they Biden's testicles? That was my question, Congressman.
No. I think the point, though, is what it shows is that you really have you have this bubbling pluralistic society underneath there, and there are people with a spectrum of views. And in this case, their coalition is kept together by hardliners. And if you lose the confidence of the hardliners, you lose your ability to govern. So they knew that they had to strike. It was a real attack. Make no mistake about that. It wasn't a fake attack, as some people were trying to liken it. The reality is that they sent, about 100 Shahed drones and about, 200, missiles of various types for that 330 number totally. First thing I would tell you is it could have been a devastatingly bad attack had all those, drones and rockets gotten to their targets in terms of collateral civilian damage, following the Russian model of kill innocent people versus soldier-to-soldier confrontation. And here's what actually happened, though. They telegraphed what they were going to do. They informed Jordan and Saudi Arabia. They informed Syria. Israel was informed back channel through European contacts, through the Swiss government, case in point, that this attack was coming. And there was an understanding, relatively speaking, about what the magnitude of the attack would be. And essentially, even though it was a real attack, it was kind of like throwing a baseball player, a championship hitter, a 60-mile-an-hour fastball. That's one you can handle, as opposed to 105-mile-an-hour slider or something like that. And the point here was that it enhanced the ability of the Israelis to defend it. And they were sending multiple messages to their home constituency. We're standing up to the evil Zionists. To the rest of the world, it's kind of, we're doing what we have to do. And even to Israel indirectly is, okay, we're attacking you, but we're telling you when we're coming and what we're using and blah, blah, blah. And so all of these systems were integrated, and the Jordanians and the Saudis participated in bringing down these systems when it violated their airspace, as well as American assets helping, British assets helping, and then the core of the Israeli system. And so, that said, now we're looking at what's the response going to be. It was clearly very embarrassing across the Islamic Republic for their country that they, in effect, were being now perceived as throwing their best punch, which they hadn't. And now the Israelis are coming back. And, my understanding of the attack, it was very much a precise attack, but it proved several things with the platforms that were used. They validated some stealth technology. They validated the ability to control cruise missiles that were remotely launched and redirect them to specific targets en route. And they took out some key facilities, radar detection, EW, and Air Force facilities in that base near Isfahan. And so the meta message, while the world was saying, oh, Israel was restrained, they were being calm, the message that was sent was, if I can put this in more of a street vernacular without the profanity, is, okay, you gave it your best shot, and we kicked your butt there. And by the way, with this raid the other day, we proved that we can reach out and touch you and you don't even know we're coming. And to the delight of those in the West who have integrated many of these platforms, we saw very quickly that we can defeat every current Russian electronic warfare and radar platform system that's out there.
Oh, good.
And the other country who was watching all of this quite aghast as they were after the Iraqis were swept off the table in Desert Storm are the Russians. And they're seeing, once again, is the factor of bluster or bloviation versus actual technical military capability is quite different.
Well, it's interesting. I thought the first thing that came to my mind was, why did we give up Bagram Air Force Base, or the air base there, when this stuff started happening?
General Scott Miller, they did not want to do that in Afghanistan. The leaders on the ground wanted to keep it. So that's Lloyd Austin, Million Biden decision.
Yeah. I'd heard that the U.S. had actually signaled through back channels to Iran that a limited attack on Israel would be acceptable, sort of the way they telegraphed that to Putin, about invading Ukraine. You think there's any truth to that?
I don't know anything about that. I would highly doubt that representatives of the National Command Authority would convey a message like that. Sometimes I think resolute silence is better than making dithering public comments like that. No different than the comments around oil production and those sorts of things relevant to the Ukrainians and the Russian situation. So it's going to be an ongoing dialogue. We haven't had necessarily the A players in a lot of positions in this administration, which is unfortunate. But ultimately, it all comes down to the man in the corner office and the ability to make rational decisions. And most importantly, that neither this president nor the last president had the ability to do this, but to go and rationally and calmly explain to the people of the United States why we have to make a choice for a difficult course of action and build broad unity and support for that. Whether you agree with one's politics or not, it's not the issue, but we need leaders who can do that, particularly when there's so much misinformation flying around. Switching to the second point on Israel and the two-state solution, I believe in an ideal world that is the optimal outcome. However, I think if you look at Israeli polling right now and also polling in the Palestinian areas, there's resentment on both sides. It's not a one-sided issue by any means. It's very much been a fight about land. It took on a religious flavor about 35 years ago, but it's always been about land and who has the right to control that land. And the windows were kind of blown by both sides in the 90s and the early 2000s. And we are in a difficult situation right now. I think it would be near impossible to have an effective two-state solution because to actually achieve that level of security and independence for the Palestinians would be perceived as a grave threat by many Israelis who were rather indifferent to the issue before 10/7. So it's aspirational. A lot would have. I'm not saying it's impossible, but a lot would have to happen in order to, get to the place that would help. And I'll give you an example where there was much less carnage involved on both sides. If you look at the agreement in Northern Ireland that led to the peace between the Irish Republican Army and the Union government, or the Union government leaders, the Protestants. Eventually, they exhausted themselves, and a bridge literally was built of empathy among some of the negotiators who had lost family members and friends in this, and they were able, by sitting at the table, to experience each other's humanity, and that created the space for the compromise that's had peaceful relations there ever since. And that's what ultimately it would, I think, take an act of God. I don't know if it's reconcilable in that part of the world, but that would be what I think it takes to get there. And the conundrum, particularly, again, we talk about this in February, but Yahya Sinwar, who was the architect of the attacks, essentially a horror movie evil genius, knew the type of reaction that the visceral anger would incite from the Israeli side. And they have managed to change the media message and perception about, what's happening in the West Bank. Here's the conundrum. I mean, we understand the rage, and they understand the need for justice and eliminating Hamas, which only has about 4 functional battalions left stuffed underground in the area of Rafah. But they have to be dealt with. The unfortunate aspect of the optics of urban warfare, and I think we talked about this in the past too, is it's a high casualty affair when the Israeli Special Operations Unit, I don't know if it was Yamam or Shetet 13 or Seret Maktal, but went in and got those 2 or 3 hostages out last month. What didn't catch a lot of media was 100 civilians were killed, as well as some Hamas folks in that. And I'm not getting into the price of a life or anything like that. I'm just saying is you have collateral second and third order effects that are fueled by this. And so, I think that I'll give you a parable when we talk about Israel that I think really fits this. So right before I was elected to Congress, I was doing a big farm harvest festival event in a rural county in what was soon to become my congressional district. And I had a constituent who used to send me letters to tell me that God would bless me if I publicly advocated for Palestinian genocide. And he didn't say that literally. Like, oh no, I mean, he was thinking it's like Jesus said, people will tell you to, kill your relatives. I'm paraphrasing, and they'll think that they're doing God a favor. But I said, well, I don't really think that's the right approach, having served over there in the U.S. Army. And then I was trying to answer this as thoughtfully as possible. And a couple of folks, and another guy said, well, I thought you said you were a Christian. I thought you said you love Jesus. And I'm like, I do. I'm a Christ follower. I am a Christian. But I'm trying to explain the dynamics so that you can relate to this. And I was standing in this crowd thinking I was about to be, hard and feathered. And I finally said, I threw up a flare prayer to the Lord, and I said, Lord, give me some words. And just it came out of my mouth. The thought came. I looked at all these men and women, and I said, I pointed at one old guy, and I said, how long has your family been on your farm? And then he got the answer. He said, 150 years. So he'd been there since before his family had been there since before the Civil War. And I started going around, and almost everybody there, the vast majority, had at least 3 generations, if not more than a century on their land. And I said, okay, that's very helpful. So let's take a look back. Kentucky was a border state in the Civil War. We had both armies, North and South, coming through. And as we all remembered, in parts of northern Kentucky, many of the Confederate sympathizers were people who felt driven from their homes when the Union Army came in. It wasn't as bad as it was in the, down in Tennessee or in the East Coast, but many of them moved to Russell, Kentucky in the South. And I said, so the war has ended now, and you suddenly found when this war was over and you come back home, and you found a whole bunch of people from Ohio and Michigan and New York and Pennsylvania living on your farms, and they told you they weren't leaving. What would your reaction be? And the dude who asked me if I was actually a Christian said, "Why, of course, we'd kill them all." And the point is, that's the answer. It's about who has rights to the land. And if you have I've had these discussions with people all across the political spectrum throughout Israel and the Palestinian territories, and it comes down to that's the fundamental issue, and who can hold that. And and I'm going to make an editorial comment that may tick off some people, but I will say this: all this commentary and all this fraudulent stuff that passes for academic assessment that wants to call us or Israel or any any Western or Northern European country, settler colonialist countries, probably hasn't read very much history in their life. Because every country in the world, including all of the people groups in that part of the world, established the gold standard for subjugating other people and taking over territory 2,000 or over 1,000 years ago. So there.
So, Congressman Davis, I'm going to transition to rapid fire round. because John and I have a lot to ask you about. So my rapid fire, I'm going to just throw out topics and have you talk on. But my first question is, do you have a clearance that you can still get briefed on intel forever as a congressman?
I have. No, I let my top secret go. I just didn't feel like paying all the money to keep it up.
Okay.
But most of the people I work with are TS. I do a tremendous amount of open source intelligence analysis, which I've done for years, and piece things together. And you can usually, the irony is you can get about a 95% accurate picture through open source.
Oh, no, I know that's true. I just didn't know if that was a gift they kept, they would brief you all. So rapid fire. So why don't we have a peace envoy that's really out there fighting on behalf of Israel and Ukraine so that we can end this? I just feel like we don't have one.
Everything starts at the top. I believe personally, look at the president's ability to explain things to the American people. And again, we've had this problem for 2 presidencies in a row now. And whether you like or dislike Barack Obama or George W. Bush or Bill Clinton or George Bush 41 or Ronald Reagan, they could go in front of a camera or go in front of a group of people and explain with some degree of passion and empathy why they thought their solution was important for America, right or wrong. They had that ability to communicate. And we're in a different place right now nationally. My hope is that we have a leader that emerges that can actually do that for the American people. We may be waiting a few years before that happens, but nonetheless, that's what we need from us.
All right, FISA Bill. Are you a supporter?
Yes. Yes, and here's why. Let me ask you a question, and then this will help color the FISA discussion. If your partner there was repeatedly communicating with known foreign terrorists and exchanging information that was dangerous to the United States of America and threatening the lives of Americans, as the foreign terrorist was instructing your friend, John, to blow up the radio station or do some other atrocity, would it be appropriate for him to be for those communications to be monitored to see if there was other malign activity that he was going to participate in? That's the question.
Well, I heard another congressman say his analogy was if the roofer has a roofer working on your roof, then you get caught up as a customer in that, and you're just an innocent bystander, and now they're looking at you. And I haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah, but the way that's not really true. The way this really works, I've been frustrated talking to some of these members who say this stuff in public, going back to when they were brand new members of Congress. Some people have actually true, genuine, principled reasons for disagreeing with it, understanding the risks associated with their position to the country. But the reality of this is that the law is focused on one thing: is communicating with a known foreign terrorist repetitively. For example, Anwar el-Awlaki, who Rand Paul still calls that state-sanctioned murder as opposed to a justice operation, who was an American who was advocating jihad, sedition, treason, revolution in America, and the killing of innocents, was actively communicating with numerous people inside the United States who had malign action, one of whom was the Major Hassan, who killed all those people at Fort Hood in November of 2009. The system, even at its more stringent in the prior iterations of FISA, is not perfect by any means. But anybody who comes up collaterally with that, so let's say that you just happen to exchange a social media post or a text or a phone call professionally with Major Hassan while he's actively planning his actions, that's just an anomaly. That's not you're not going to be massively investigated. It's just an anomaly if there's no ties, other communications. That's flagged and blocked, and you're right back to focusing on folks who are actively engaged in malign activities, espionage, seditious activities. So the bigger reality is that it's overblown. My last year in Congress, I think the number of people who had the warrantless searches in the entire country of over 300 million people, put this in mind, was like 54.
Okay.
And we have active cells of Hamas disappeared into parts of this country, many of whom have come over the southern border and during this administration. We have, people of military age from other countries that are not friendly to us.
That's on my next little list here.
Well, the thing, Congressman, I'd like to get your opinion on. It's not. I'm not. The FISA concept. I'm for it. The problem is the safeguards are not in place. And I remember the debate on the Patriot Act. Going back and forth on that, and it was about the safeguards, and the fact that here you had the abuses of the FISA process, which have been brought to light, with the Trump stuff, and the lack of reaction by the FISA court to the abuses by the government and the misrepresentations. It's like the safeguards that they promised were there are not there, and nobody seems to care. And that's the problem I have with the law. Is it's the safeguard process that is completely broken or not being enforced. And can anything be done to remediate that?
Well, I think that's a pretty broad statement to say it's completely broken. The issue over the FBI investigation and the questions about Russia collusion around Trump's campaign, it was too dysfunctional to conduct any collusion any more than it was possible to cheat on through thousands of voting machines across the country. So let's bring this back to operational reality.
I'm bringing operational reality, and that's you have an FBI lawyer that intentionally falsified a document, and nothing. He didn't go to prison.
That's the case where something should
go right there. That's the problem.
Yeah, and I would say that there are plenty of places in the federal bureaucracy that need reforms. I think the deeper question is. And this is one of the challenges that both parties own, frankly, not just the false accusations against Republicans, but both parties own, is that because we've not kept the main thing, a lot of these institutions are allowed to be adrift. And Congress has abdicated so much power to the executive branch, hitting the easy button on legislation to get things passed, that the non-elected people are writing the rules and regulations that govern that policy. It's one of the reasons that I introduced the REINS Act back in October of 2009. That I think Kat Kammack is the sponsor of this Congress from up in northern Florida. And what that was designed to do, for example, was every major rule that is going to be enacted by an administration has to have an up or down vote by the Congress. And the president has to sign it. So you have a chain of accountability that the voters can look to, as opposed to some faceless bureaucrat in the EPA or the Department of Education or Health and Human Services. That's one point. And I think I trust implicitly the credibility of my friends who have served a long time on the Intelligence Committee. I know my own interactions, through the years. I will say one thing. Tucker Carlson made an inane statement that's floating around the web about how members of Congress tell him they're all terrified of the intelligence community and the intelligence agencies, and that's the farthest thing from the truth. That's complete hogwash. You get the odd, weird person that might do something, like the IRS dude up in Covington, Kentucky, that released some celebrity tax return information, but the reality is the institution overall, works quite well. That doesn't mean it doesn't need improved oversight, but I would not add additional complexity to that oversight, because that impedes the ability to, address deeper issues. And I'll give you a case in point. So because of an IT problem in Department of Homeland Security, among the many different databases they had that didn't function together at one time, this is going back over a decade, back when I was in the House, my wife, who's an Italian-American by descent, born in New York City, was on the terrorist watch list for 3 years. And we got snagged every time we hit a checkpoint. And it turned out I was a bit animated about this, and came to find out that people who were Irish Americans were the ones suffering the most from these no-fly lists and things, because by marrying me, now Pat Davis had the name that matched a suspect from the IRA, a bomb maker, apparently from the 1970s when she was in high school. And so every time she traveled, that triggered this thing, and it brought it up and flagged it. And I followed her back. We came in from a think tank trip over in Jordan, and we're literally standing between several national political leaders. I'm nobody, right? But standing between several well-known national political leaders. And I turned around and she's gone, walking off with some guard. And I chased him back. And I said, "I'm going with you." And he goes, "Sir, you can't go back here." I said, "I think I can go back there based on my job."
Bomb maker.
But I came in there, and well, the first time it happened, to her credit, she would not say who she was in the sense of her background. They wanted to know what her job was, and she said, "I'm not answering any questions."
Oh my gosh.
And Pat's issue was, if they're going to take me, that means any citizen can be caught up in this. But what we came to find out the next time it happened, when I went back, I just said to the watch commander, I said, "Look," he was pretty nervous because, having a, member of leadership come in that you just pulled off the line for a potential security violation. And I said, hey, I got a question for you. You know that what I do for a living, and I'm not here to cause you a hassle, but I want to help you fix your problem, because clearly something's not right if you're grabbing, the middle-aged housewife of a Republican member of Congress who's a national security expert." And he looks at me and he smiles and he said, he was like, "Darn straight, sir," paraphrasing. And then he said, "I just want to tell you that 90% of the checks that we do, we already know by behavioral pattern recognition, are not threats to the country. But they have to pull them aside and go through these interrogations." And this officer agreed with me. In fact, I said, "What's the suggestion?" And he actually said something I talked about for a long time. He's improving the data integration. And a lot of people get caught because of glitches in the systems that are not modernized or not properly integrated. But the bigger reality is, in general, though, that our system is pretty effective. Not perfect, but it's pretty effective. And I would say, based on about 40 years of experience of being around various flavors of national security, I would say that overall, the people who are the practitioners, the frontline folks, are really just trying to do their jobs. And, when you find an abuse, to John's point, that should be prosecuted, period. No questions asked. And frankly, if there's damages or recompense, that needs to be given to a citizen if they've been, wrongly targeted.
Okay. Well, our borders, a debacle, and then FBI Ray came out and said that, we've got some lone wolf worries, and we've got dangerous individuals. We've got, I think, the Chinese military plus all the gotaways. So just wanted your thought on the border, because, again, it comes back to all the billions of dollars we're giving to other countries, and our border is just wide open.
It's a very dangerous situation. I think that Biden's pandering to the progressive left on this issue. Ultimately, citizenship needs to mean something. I think you may find a pathway to an effective solution by denying citizenship to people who want work permits here. But the reality is, one thing that Joe Biden did say truthfully was about the killer from Georgia, or that happened in Georgia during State of the Union, when he made the comment that he's an illegal. I'll just quote Ronald Reagan: "If somebody comes into the country without authorization, they're an illegal alien, period." Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that, that their humanity is demeaned because of that. It means that they violated United States law. And I mean, if I try to go into France illegally, guess what's going to happen to me? I will be captured and deported. Virtually any country in the world, you try that. And so I think there's kind of a misunderstanding of, this that's propagated from those folks. Candidly, strong border enforcement is necessary. And again, despite the misinformation that was flying around a month or so ago, the Senate bill that came out with the immigration strictures that were put into it, particularly on controlling the southern border, limiting asylum applications, not permitting catch and release or release of asylum applicants into the economy. When I was in Congress, we couldn't get any of that done. We didn't have supermajorities in both chambers to be able to pass that kind of legislation. And what was potential would have been probably the biggest step forward in immigration enforcement in my professional life, at least since the 90s. But that's not going to happen now. And so we are where we are, and we'll see what comes forward from this. I'd like to see HR 2 happen, but I don't see that happening because, again, politics is a game of math. You've got to get to 218, 60, and have a president to sign it.
Right. And then what are your thoughts? We had this protest also that was chanting up in Michigan, "Death to America." And when people start chanting that, and death to Israel, but death to America, I don't know. To me, that's kind of where free speech ends when you're in America, to me. So I just wanted to hear what you were thinking about that.
I think that those were repulsive statements. The question, if this was 1917 or 1918 when that happened, those people would have been imprisoned under Wilson's laws that were imposed during the First World War. The one thing that I would say, though, is that President Wilson's real legacy wasn't being a great Democrat. It was compromising the civil liberties of Americans more than any other president in history. So I guess on the one hand, people have to have. I remember I was sitting across from Dave Petraeus at a hearing when some protesters from a really obnoxious group called Code Pink broke into the hearing room and were saying all kinds of awful things about American soldiers. And I had a West Point classmate sitting next to General Petraeus and a couple other friends of mine who were on the staff. And one got particularly animated, was clearly looking like he wanted to turn around and share what he really thought of those protesters. and General Petraeus, to his credit, I'll never forget this moment because it encapsulated what freedom of speech, meant to me in a powerful way. And he leaned back to his staff and he just put his hand up and he said, "Just remember, men, we serve so they can say what they want to say without fear." And so you've got that as a bookend in public. But let's look at what happened at Berkeley's law school a couple of weeks ago, when the dean of the law school, who actually is very close friends with a friend of mine in D.C., who's a Democrat, but he's a liberal Democrat. He's a First Amendment scholar. Not crazy from everything I understand, in the sense of like Ilhan Omar crazy, but let's step back and see what happened. Every year he would do 3 or 4 essentially progressive dinners where he'd bring the entire graduating law class over and allow them to, they'd have dinner at his house and they'd talk about the future. And it was sort of a way to thank them for their hard work and commend them on their, future careers in law. And it's a great honor, frankly, if you've got a national subject matter expert who wants to mentor you. And so a couple of turkeys came into that and were filming themselves and started a pro-Palestine, death to Israel, death to America protest in his house.
Oh my
and
gosh.
As one of the preeminent First Amendment scholars, he got up and told him, he said, "I want you to leave my house." And he said, "The bottom line is your right to free speech doesn't extend to my dining room." And so the question, ultimately becomes for us, the people, is not wanting to limit all freedom of speech, but maintain that in some kind of a context. I would not react well to a protester calling for the death of the country that gives you the right to spew the hatred that you do. So I think there might be some legal remedies in there somewhere. We handled that at a soldier's funeral in 2007 when the what's that Baptist church from Kansas, despicable people that would say, God hates your son. God wanted your son to die. Westboro Baptist. Yeah, Westboro Baptist. That's it. And I was arriving at this funeral for one of the soldiers from a unit in my district. And it was a very tragic day. And as I was driving up, these people were lining up out on the road. And I walked up, I went inside, and I let some of the officers, Army officers who were there, know that this was happening. So we made sure the family didn't see any of this. The drapes were pulled on the windows. And I remember walking back out about 30 minutes later before the service began, and they were gone. And I walked up to the senior deputy from the Lexington Police Department, Fayette County, actually Sheriff's Department in Fayette County, Kentucky. And I said, "Hey, where did they go?" And he said, "Oh, Congressman, we got this." we arrested them for their safety. They'll be released after it was pragmatic. We had a similar experience in my county where a young Marine had died in Iraq and was coming back, and that group did the same thing, and the sheriff just let them know, you'll be picked up at the Indiana border when you cross into Boone County. Don't come here. And so we're going to respect the family in their moment of grief. And I think at a localized level, that's the way to handle these things, as opposed to a one-size-fits-all laws. Let the communities weigh in. If you look at the history of our country, we've had some pretty broad spectrum from the rational to the completely insane speech that I think to some degree has to necessarily be tolerated to keep the rights of everybody else.
So two more things. The Biden and the dementia, I mean, every day it's awful. And this week he talked about his uncle and cannibalism. And I just feel like we don't have a president.
Cannibal's a bad name. Don't give cannibals a bad name now.
Well, the funny thing is my grandfather was actually shot down in World War II over New Guinea, and my father has a whole World War II album with these little New Guinea people. They were actually very little, and they were on the island for like a month, so there was never any mention of cannibalism. So,
actually, the tribesmen accrued great rewards and status by helping the downed pilots, and in some cases, the most remote pilot or the most remote tribes had never had any interaction with the outside world. They even made like idols of aircraft out of reeds and stuff, and were worshiping them because they thought it was a sign from the gods. And
I've got to look at this photo album.
Biden's uncle was shot down in the ocean.
Right. So, back to the dementia part, and then, the PM of Japan came, and he was doing the military ceremony out on the lawn there, and the Marine had to hold his hand. It's just been so awful. It's
very troubling. And, ironically, I think if they would make a change from Joe Biden to a couple of other emerging Democrat governors, not the governor of California or the governor of Illinois, but other governors, I think would have some real potential on the ticket to, bolster the party. But they also would be advocating things that fly in the face of the, let's say, the less than rational wing of the party. We are where we are. They're going to nominate him unless there's some kind of a health catastrophe between now and then. And let's be real. Both nominees are not on their A game, and neither nominee, I think, offers a particularly rosy view of what the potential for governing in the future is, especially based on what the makeup of the Congress is going to look like next year.
And then William Barr, who does not like Trump, came out and said he's voting for Trump now. So, what are we going to do, Congressman Davis? Because November is right around the corner, and these are the choices. And I feel like our country we're disintegrating with this Biden administration, from women athletes, trans men are taking their trophies all of these Trump trials are just getting in the way of everything. And I don't even know if they're truthful. When you hear all these, conservative lawyers, it's just kabuki theater. So how do we win November? He's not the perfect candidate, but I can't live, with $29 pot roasts and gas that's out of control and just inflation.
Trump's trade policies are not guaranteeing that prices are going to come down. If he institutes the tariff regime he's talking about, inflation will come back with a vengeance. That's just economics. But I guess I'd put it in this context. I said this before on the show. I think neither alternative is especially positive for the country in the long run, and we've got to look beyond these two men. I will say this: that if I've seen a lot less happen to other public figures, but I would say that if I had several felony indictments, that would be problematic for my maintaining my support and credibility as a man of integrity and respecting the principles that I publicly espoused. And I think I may have shared this in the past on the show, but the biggest thing that we have a problem with in the country right now in both parties, and it's dominated by the fringes of both parties, is a deconstruction and abdication of dealing in objective shared truths. And so, you can talk to me all day long about your ability to fly, but if I'm not allowed to talk about gravity, which doesn't matter whether you believe in gravity or not, gravity believes in you, you're going to jump off that building and crash and burn into a smoking hole, as opposed to flying off into the sunset. And in that same vein, I spoke to 60 Army officers at a professional development session I do about every 6 months for the Army. And the one thing that came out in that, I had wondered if I'd get kicked out of the program, never be invited back. And it turned out to be the highest rated one of the talks I had given over the last 10 years with this group these groups. And I brought up this issue of objective truth and of the lack of it, and how it's infecting so much of our institutions, so much of the military, so much of society. And these young people who are politically very diverse and ethnically very diverse, to a person, affirmed that what I recognize or what I shared with them, they felt was the ultimate macro problem, is we're not dealing in truth any longer. And that's part of the challenge. Is you can go to whatever makes you feel a certain way, but as John and I know as aviators, you certainly know as being in the Air Force too, is I have to trust the instruments, not what I feel.
Right.
Because if I trust how I feel, I'm going to die.
So, Congressman Davis, you leave us on a high note for America and our future. And because you're fighting for it up in D.C., doing your consulting work. So can you leave us on a high note?
I would say there's a center of mass of good people in D.C. The overwhelming majorities of the staffs in both parties, the overwhelming majority of members in both parties, we may disagree with the path to get there, but most people agree on what they want as a common welfare for the American people. And robust political debate has always been part. It's a little more heightened now with social media, but robust political debate is something we've always had in this country. And it's a steam valve that keeps us from a path to any kind of authoritarian government or loss of civil liberties, loss of our democracy and republic. And the things that I believe, as I look at the young generation coming up, I look at my sons and daughters, I look at many of their friends. Half my family is tied to the military, and of my 6 kids, and I look at what each of my children are doing. I look at friends' involvements, engagements in their communities, doing the things that make a difference one life at a time, and those who are stepping up to volunteer from all kinds of backgrounds. I was up at Fort Bragg / Fort Liberty a few weeks ago, visiting soldiers up there, and I can tell you, I talk with those young men and women, and I'm encouraged, and I see hope for my country. That as long as we can, function based on truth and not get off on these urban legends and myths and all. And I would tell you, and the one thing that I would say honestly is we've got to demand a higher standard in our leaders, period. It doesn't matter if Trump wants to go out and say he's being persecuted. I mean, he committed a felony if he took those documents to his house, period. And all the stuff that he did with that. People aren't talking about that. It's almost like there's a double standard because he says something and therefore he should be absolved when any of the rest of us listening to this would be prosecuted. And so, I think that is there political motivation in prosecutions? Yeah, political motivation in prosecutions has happened for 240 years in one vein or another, because there's always political implications when a public figure is involved. But we have to step back and look at the operating mentality of what folks have done. And that goes on both sides. And I think that Biden and Trump have not been held accountable by their own parties for their ethical and personal shortfalls. And that's an indictment of, frankly, the American people, not of them, the fact that we would tolerate that behavior. And
always a pleasure, Congressman Davis. Yeah. Always a pleasure. No, I just hope, November just seems so far away, and John and I read news all day. We're on social media, and it's so painful right now. And we still have months to go. I don't even know how I'm going to, I know it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, but and then are we going to be able to clean it up if we take the White House in November?
Barring a black swan event, I'm going to give you my prediction.
Okay.
I think we're going to narrowly lose the House. I think we're going to lose the House. I think we're going to take the Senate back with maybe 51.
Okay.
Candidates like Carrie Lake in Arizona have committed seppuku over a number of issues, and she's not going to get that coalition back, I don't think. And we're going to have because of her behavior, we're going to elect, or the Arizonans are probably going to elect a socialist in Gallego out there. But we have a real chance to get to 51, maybe even 52 in the Senate. And I think, in all likelihood, if the current trends follow, again, short of a black swan event, I think that Biden probably will be very narrowly reelected in electoral college victory.
Shoot. Okay.
And it's just watching. No, I've overseen hundreds and hundreds of elections, and I'm just saying this is what the data is saying today.
Okay.
The public national polls.
Now I'm sad, Congressman.
Don't be sad.
I know. Well, it's a mess. I know. But
Tucker I'll leave you on a positive note.
Okay.
Tucker Carlson was talking about the wonders of Putin and Russia and all this stuff. If he had driven 15 miles from where he was extolling the virtues of the Russian Federation, he'd have found that it's a really I was going to say it was a country that was referred to with a particular adjective by Donald Trump talking about South Asia. And most Russians would tell you that, even though it's like, yes, we can't get food and we can't get bread, but we are a great country. It's a, kind of a Russian dark joke. But the reality is, in that part of the world, in China, in Russia, in most of the countries in the world, to have a conversation like we just had would cause all three of us to be taken and incarcerated. And the great thing about America is we can share what we believe.
I know, and you're brilliant. So I'll be calling you before the election because you always have so much to share with us, and you're fighting up there on behalf of America because I know you are, totally America is in your heart. So, such a pleasure, Congressman Davis, and we will have you back, of course. So, God bless you, and we'll be right back on Veronica Live. Welcome back to Veronica Live, and I'm here with Statesman John Salak. He's just like normally I'm the one that's sick, John, and today you've got the football, and you've got your cat hairball. You're coughing up over there. You have to mute your mic. I guess did you just mute it? You just muted it.
Yes, because I'm coughing and hacking here.
Well, we've had a tremendous show already with Representative Griff Griffitts. Over in Florida's legislature, and the sausage making is brutal, as we see. And if you don't have a sponsor, you're toast. And then I'm still reeling from former Congressman Geoff Davis of Kentucky, who's a show regular as well, saying his prediction is that we will not win the White House in November. And I'm kind of feeling that way because it's so bloody. Everybody says politics is a blood sport, but on social media, it is like cut your throat sport. So.
Well, you have, and not only that, we have to overcome the Democrats cheating on the elections also. So, there's so many ways to do it. The mail. I'm really concerned about this mail ballot system. And I'll go back to something I saw. I guess. Our representative Neil Dunn.
Wait, I want to tell you, because remember how you got your ballot mega late?
Yeah, a week after the election.
Okay,
I got
so
my
listen
ballot.
to this. Sadly, my son and daughter-in-law's dog died right before Easter. I sent a condolence card, which they just got. So where has it been? Because it had to go through Atlanta.
Right.
So I'm very concerned, John, about.
Well, the issue
I
is
can't even send a condolence card.
The post office is redoing their mail distribution system, okay? They're going to these centralized mail processing systems or centers, and there's, I guess, 9 of them or something like that around the country. So all the mail's getting filtered through these places. And the problem is they are grossly understaffed. And, the one I got information on up south of Atlanta was they're short 500 people a day.
Well,
500
definitely,
to 600
because
people
I
a day.
had an eBay order, because Dr. eBay, I had to see my therapist on eBay, and that was lost for,
Yep.
I actually sent something, that was lost for a couple weeks as well. And so I've had 2 things now. So I try to do UPS because I know it's going to get there, but I'm concerned, one a letter and one a package from something that I'd ordered.
Right, and Congressman Dunn sent out an email or something about a week or 2 ago saying Tallahassee's got some kind of mail foul-up system over there where they're having the same problem where people aren't getting their mail, and it's taking 4, 5, 6 days, to get things that should take 1 day. And there's something going on. So the postmaster is investigating, whatever that means. I think the whole thing is there's a whole big disaster going on, and this relying on mail votes.
How perfect is that with November right around the corner? That all this hits the fan.
So what's going to happen, Veronica, is they're going to sit there and declare that they'll take mail-in ballots, weeks after the election, after Election Day, and they'll fiddle with the damn results until they get what they want. Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of thing I foresee in this. It's like, oh, well, the central processing system is understaffed, so we're going to extend, unilaterally, no matter what the state law is, we're going to extend it, for 2 weeks that you can get your ballot back, because it's not just getting the ballot to me. Okay, so it was going from Panama City to Georgia. Okay, I can drive that distance in 5 hours. Almost 3 weeks to get a absentee ballot delivered. 3 weeks. Now that's one way.
With a little condolence card.
I know, but then it has to go.
And then my eBay order coming into me, because it did go through, because you could see where it was going through, and it was going through Atlanta. And more than, literally, I think it was almost 3 weeks. I thought the stuff was lost, honestly.
Right.
They're
consolidating these smaller mail processing centers into these giant things, and the post office workers that are at the other ones don't want to move. Yeah. Because they have to drive, 2 hours to get to work. So they're saying we're not moving, we're not going.
Well, then goodbye, and let's hire the next person so I can actually get my letter or your ballot or my package.
It's all union though, so you got to deal with that, because I the whole thing. I just foresee this relying on mail ballots that the Republicans are pushing for is going to be a disaster. It really is. So to me, it's like show up and plan on voting, and that's kind of the way I am right now. It's like I'm not going to take a chance on the mail ballot for the November election. It's too important.
No, you can't.
If I have to drive down here to vote, I'll drive down here all night to vote.
You're going to have to drive down because it's too important. And then I love Congressman Davis, but he definitely doesn't like Congressman Gates. And every time I hear Congressman Gates talking, it's what I want to hear. So I don't consider myself a crazy MAGA person, But I don't know. It's just I really don't want another speaker, because it's been painful kicking out McCarthy and getting Speaker Johnson now. So we don't need that, because right now the election's too critical. But who is pulling his strings now?
Well, that's kind of where I'm at right now. To me, it's for what Marjorie Taylor Greene's trying to do right now is too late. Okay, we are way past everything. Look, we impeached Mayorkas, right? Finally did something. They impeached somebody. Okay, they impeached Mayorkas, which I'll give them credit for. He needed to be impeached, and they did the job. Okay, so you need to put that in the plus column. That you have the other side of this is vacating the speaker. What's your plan? What is your plan? It only runs this session. These people that are elected now only run from now to January. So we're down to what, 7-8 months?
Oh my gosh.
Left in this congressional cycle. So it's like, and then you want to spend another 2 months grinding through a speaker, trying to find another speaker after all these votes?
We don't have time, because
right.
I cannot,
and that's why I don't understand.
I cannot deal with. Literally, Biden is so cringeworthy. And this week, talking about his uncle and cannibalism in New Guinea, and I mean, it's so pathetic. And then did you see the soundbite with Raggedy Ann? KJP trying to she's fluttering her eyeballs, and well, he was just in the moment fluttering her eyeballs, and I'm like, what is wrong? And then of course she always engages Peter Doocy, because she's like, this isn't a joke. Well, it is a joke. We're a joke on the world stage, and every week Biden is the dementia guy that keeps on giving. And it's literally awful. And then he had an event. Did you see that event? It wasn't even. It was empty. I think it was up in Pennsylvania, and so I commented. I guess they ran out of their free, Amazon gift cards because nobody was
they have to bust people in to get any kind of audience and pay them.
Yes.
But it's just like I said, the difference between him and Trump is enormous as far as audience. Unfortunately, I don't know that translates into votes, but again, because of all the cheating the Democrats do, and they do cheat, okay? They will cheat, lie, and steal to win an election.
What are we seeing? Because today or yesterday, the AG from New York has come out and said, the bond that Trump has put forward, the $175 million, it's not good enough. Whoever is funding the money isn't capable because they're a small business, something like that. Yeah. Every day, I'm like, oh, great. I commented on X. I'm like, okay, let's poke the Trump bear again. Every day. I'm so sick of this woman. I'm sick of these people.
They have to stay in the news cycle. That's what this is all about, It's the crap with Alvin Bragg, the judge in that case. It's amazing how trampled on Trump's rights are. He's being tried as a criminal, okay, and this is a criminal prosecution, and his rights are just being trampled on left and right. The judge is telling his lawyers, you can't question this and you can't question that, and it's like, what do you mean? We're lawyers. We're here. That's our right, is to question your decisions. And the gag order. It's like, okay, here you have Michael Avenatti on MSNBC talking about Trump, but the gag order says Trump can't say anything about Avenatti. It's like, well, if you're gonna have a gag order to keep people from talking, then make it for everybody, including the witnesses. But no, it just applies to Trump only, and it just to me, it just doesn't make any. I won't say it makes any sense. It makes perfect sense when you dealing with the corrupt justice system. It makes perfect sense, and that's what we're dealing with.
Well, it's so corrupt. It's so corrupt. Correct. And then I follow the governor of New York, and then the mayor of New York, and so now they're trying to handle crime and shoplifting, and so it's really fun to go just read the comments because people are so done with these people, that's supposed to make us all feel better, So I don't know. I've definitely been getting so much traction on Twitter when it said White House defends Biden's claim his uncle was eaten by cannibals. I said, how can you defend fiction? That's gone viral too.
I thought they had discounted it twice already. Said it's not. They'd walked it back, but
yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, it's so embarrassing.
But the 12 people. Trump's got a jury, and you go through the 12 people on it.
Let's look at the 12 people because that's in our stack of stuff, and and they seem educated. So it's not like they've got somebody that's not educated. So you got somebody in Hell's Kitchen. Oh, that's so good to eat in Hell's Kitchen in New York around there. They've got a good Japanese little restaurant. He's in investment banking. There's somebody in the West Village, so that's a high-end neighborhood in New York. He's a security engineer, has 3 children. Upper East Side, also nice. Oh, he's originally from Lebanon, retired, and enjoys fly fishing. How do they get these details?
They got a lot of stuff on these people.
A woman who works as a speech therapist, so she's making good money.
Liberal.
Okay, Murray Hill man. I don't know where Murray Hill man works as an eyewear company. At an eyewear company and enjoys the outdoors. Okay. And then a woman from Cali who lives in the Upper Manhattan and works in product development.
Oh, my God. Definitely a liberal. Uber liberal.
Okay. Upper East Side woman who works as a physical therapist and enjoys tennis and paddleboarding.
Yep.
How do we know this?
Another one. Well, there's some common things about all these people that apparently almost all of them exclusively get their news from the New York Times and CNN, which that tells you. That's what I'm saying. These people are leftist liberals. They're not. There's not a jury of his peers here. Okay.
Well, 7 Manhattanites joined 5 other jurors were selected earlier this week. So a West Harlem man, originally from Ireland. I was going to say, oh, he's black. No, he's from Ireland.
No.
He's white, who works in sales and will serve as the jury's foreperson. A man who lives in Chelsea. Well, and he's a corporate lawyer. I was going to say that's a fancy neighborhood. Another woman lives in Harlem her whole life and works in education. Another woman in Chelsea works as a software engineer. And then another man from the Upper East Side that works as a practicing civil litigation lawyer. Okay, we've got some educated people here. Investment banking, speech therapist, physical therapist, corporate lawyer, software engineer. I mean, they're all educated, John. It's not like they're not. They all have degrees, and they've all paid taxes in New York. And when you live in New York City, you pay New York City tax too. New York state tax, and then your federal tax. So it's the state that keeps on not given but taken.
Well, it comes down to, particularly on the lawyer side, whether the lawyers, if they're activist lawyers, and that's what we don't know, or are they textualist, like Alito was, or and Clarence Thomas are, because this is a novel application of the law that Bragg is coming up with.
Why do you think they're allowing 2 lawyers on a trial to be juror? I don't know if I've ever seen that before.
Well, that's what it kind of surprised me, because lawyers are officers of the court, and usually officers of the court, and that's on my jury summons. It says there, if you're a policeman, like a gun-toting kind of policeman, you don't have to serve on the jury, because you're going to be biased, right? You're going to be biased towards law enforcement. So, the lawyers. So the problems with the lawyers,
litigation. So, is that divorces? What's the definition of civil litigation?
Court. It's probably civil certainly would be that. Lawsuits could be a trip and fall. Lawyer. One of the ambulance chasers. Yeah, exactly. So, it's just hard to say. And of course, the fact they get their news from CNN and New York Times,
which CNN it's so biased, and they hate white people so much. Yeah. So I always listen to CNN on Saturday mornings because they're like a live show early. And the black anchor that this morning was just off the chain, because I guess there's some sort of event happening over in Savannah, and the mayor and the cops are like, it's on an island off of there, and it's been out of control, like all these spring breaks, like Daytona,
St. Simon's Island.
Even this year, where we live, Panama City Beach had a little craziness too, and our people don't allow it. You can't drink on the beach, and so the anchor kept trying to get the guests to say it was because black colleges were coming and they didn't like black people. He literally tried to say this multiple times, and I'm like, no, that is not what the community just doesn't want. Destruction, drunks, and drugs, and debauchery is what it comes down to. So, oh my gosh, it was so painful listening to that. But I mean, back to this case. I mean, these are definitely educated people, John.
Well, I just don't think he's going to get a fair trial. I don't think it's possible, and the fact that they're wanting to drag it out, I can't imagine how 6 weeks. What are they going to be doing for 6 weeks? I have no idea.
And really, what is the? I mean, can't you pay somebody money if it's not campaign funds? So I still don't understand how this is a real case. I've got to try to get Jason on.
Well,
here.
It's first off, the statute of limitations on everything has run. Okay, so they're trying it on some trumped up thing that was because of the pandemic. Somebody extended the statute of limitations unilaterally by 1 year, and I think that's a New York thing. And so it's like, okay, the second part is the federal government has looked at all this stuff, and the Federal Election Commission is the one that should have brought, if this had been actual law breaking, the Federal Election Commission is the one that would have brought the charges. And they looked at it and said, nope, it's not a campaign expense. So what Alvin Bragg's trying to do is tie this campaign expense to a secondary crime. Now here's the problem. You have to have this secondary crime to turn it into a felony. And Bragg won't say what the secondary crime is. They won't tell the Trump people what the crime is he's being charged with. But how can you
go and prepare and go to trial and not know what you're being tried for?
Can't. Because what Bragg did with this judge, Bragg gave them 4 possible crimes, but wouldn't say which one. He gave them 4 possibilities, and the judge approved them.
How is this even possible?
Because you have
monkey banana republic,
right?
That it's out of control.
Veronica, they won't even tell him who the witness is. The trial starts on Monday, right?
That was like
they won't even tell him who the witness is going to be on Monday.
Investigate the witnesses and see if they're credible or they've got some skeletons in their closet.
How do you prepare a defense?
I don't understand
how can you do a defense if you don't even know who the witness is? And they get up there and they're like, and then the witness starts talking and it's like, I don't know how to defend against this on a cross-examination because we've had no time to prepare for it. I mean, you're supposed to give the defense a list of witnesses.
Well, when you watch like Law and Orders, it takes them a long time to prepare for a case, right?
Right. So
I mean, why are they doing this? Then?
Well, and then what's gonna happen is Trump's lawyers are going to sit there and object to not being able to be prepared to cross-examine the witness because they didn't have any notice of who the witness was, and then the judge is going to say, nope, we're going to go on with the trial. So So his rights are being compromised again and again and again and again because he's Trump. It's get Trump, get Trump, get Trump, and that's why this judge. This was not a randomly picked judge either, by the way. This judge was intentionally, specifically picked for this case, and his daughter is some kind of Democrat activist. The judge has contributed to the Biden campaign. Another Democrat activist, judge. So it's like, how in the world do you possibly get a fair trial in this kind of a state of quote justice? It's not justice.
I don't know. But then we just had the congressman on, and he doesn't think a lot of this is he thinks he should be tried on the classified documents.
I disagree 100% with him on that because the congressman, what Congressman Davis was applying was he was saying, well, if I had done that, I would be charged. Damn right you would be charged because you are not the president of the United States. You do not have the authority to unilaterally declassify anything you want that's intelligence. And that's the difference right there is the president is the ultimate declassification authority. If he says it's unclassified, it's declassified. Period. That's the end of the discussion. It is his unilateral right under the executive powers.
When I reflect back, because there was somebody this week that said that all of this was timed for this year, leading up to the election, to tie Trump in fully because he didn't step away and he decided to run again, and then we had this tweet too. Congressman Benny Johnson is calling for Trump to go to jail and to have all of his Secret Service pulled away, because I guess it's like $6 million to protect Trump a year while he's in prison. And is this not targeting Trump? I mean, this is this congressman or senator, I think he's a senator, is a full-on terrorist at this point. I mean, this is what they want. They just want convicted felon. Let's put handcuffs on him. He can't go to his son's graduation. If he goes, we're going to arrest him, and then we're going to send him to prison and give him no security. I mean, I think the prisoners probably would love Trump, actually. I have to say that.
Right. Well, the fact is they want what Benny Johnson, who was the chairman of the Democrat House January 6th committee. Right? Remember who? That's who you're dealing with here. What he's proposing is eliminating Trump's Secret Service protection, and in that way, because if Trump goes, if they tried to put Trump in jail, the Secret Service is going to override that. Okay, because their duty is to protect him, and the only way to protect him would be to shut down the entire jail so that he has no ability for any other prisoner to get anywhere near him, because they have to control access. So it means you send the Secret Service guys to jail too, basically. Yeah. And so it's like, from a practical matter, they'd basically have to shut down the entire section of the prison that Trump's in and not allow anybody else in. And the Secret Service would have to control it, would have to have control of the jail.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they control access to Trump.
Well, the CNN ESPN commentator, the black guy, Stephen A. Smith, he's always yelling because Malcolm had him on the other day, and I was like, why is that guy always yelling? I didn't realize Well, he's come out and said that Donald Trump's criminal trial just shows liberals are scared that they can't beat him on the issues and the merits. And that this is what it is all about. But what, I was thinking about it yesterday, and a former president of the United States that hasn't killed anybody. The rape thing was definitely fake. The Stormy Daniels, people are always, when you comment on it, they're like, oh, you're for a man that, had affairs and, had sex with the porn star. I don't know what he did. I don't know. I know he's not perfect, but I don't. This is what sends him to jail. I mean, granted, I wish it was Saint Trump and he only had one wife and there was never any porn stars. But I can tell you this: looking at President Biden, who can vote for that? When dismembering babies up until birth or after is okay. Yep. He's walking around lost with world leaders. Give him a microphone. His uncle's being eaten by what were they, pygmies on New Guinea, which is so not true. I'll share the pictures because I got to ask my brother to send them to me. Literally, the pygmies were 2 feet tall, and the one picture that reflects in my mind, because my American grandfather was a bomber pilot and was shot down over New Guinea. And there's little New Guinea women, they're topless. And so here's the American men with their arm around them, and one's like holding the breast of the little New Guinea woman, and she's kind of looking down at his hand, and they pose for a picture like this. So I haven't seen these pictures in probably 20 years, but that one is like imprinted in my brain. Because,
you can't unsee it, huh?
Because pilots are always, men.
Yeah, pilots.
Which there's nothing sexual really, because they're like 2 feet tall in their grass skirts. But I've got to get a hold of those pictures to share. But I'm saying these people were so little. There's no way they were like killing tall American men, But just when you think about it all, John, how did we ever get here with such disrespect for a president? The one that should have been in jail was Clinton having sex with an intern in the frickin' White House. Well, I mean, nothing happened to these people. And Mayorkas, nothing. And our border is being overrun. And, I commented on a story because on X2, because now for sure more, Venezuelan gang members are coming through, and Director Ray lets us know that again this week. And so I wrote, what is the FBI doing? What are they doing for us? They're just sending out sound bites. We know they're here. You're good luck.
Well, we don't hold people accountable anymore. And that's the problem. It's like when there's no consequences for bad behavior, what happens? The behavior continues. So it kind of goes. People used to have respect for the law. It's a total package here. Okay, these Trump trials, you got half the country, the MAGA people, whatever you want to call them, the Trump supporters, are looking at this saying this is blatantly unfair. They're using the law to prosecute Trump because that's the only way they can try to get him. And so you lose respect for the law, which I've completely lost respect for the law. That's not the way I grew
up.
Okay,
where are the good
that's not
lawyers?
The way I grew up.
You and I know lots of, like Jason Gonzalez, who's been a regular on Veronica Live. I mean, he leads the way. He's not woke. He's got his anti-woke firm. He's fighting for justice. Is Florida the only state that has good lawyers? There's got to be some good lawyers.
Well,
in
I
New
think
York.
that's what it's coming down to. Is you have the states, and perhaps that's the way the country is designed to work. The states have always been, not there was never an intention to have the states be uniform. The states were always supposed to be different, So if you like the what this state does or their characteristics or whatever, Pennsylvania, good example, Quakers, okay? The founding of Pennsylvania had a lot to do with the Quakers. So if you were a Quaker, you were probably going to be drawn to Pennsylvania as opposed to going to, I don't know, Maine or something, I don't know, pick some other state. But, the idea was the states were not uniform. The federal government was supposed to be, that's why states allocate power to the federal government. And it's not the other way around. So the states were supposed to be the experimental places. And if you didn't like this state's policies, then get up and move to another state. If you don't like California and all the taxes and stuff, do what thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of Californians are doing. Move somewhere else like Texas, or Florida. If you don't like New York and all that crap, move out of New York and move to Florida. And that's what's happening. That's what people are doing. That's the way it's supposed to work. I would never move to New York. You couldn't offer me anything.
Well, I can't afford
to move to New York. Nothing.
Well, and it was funny. Drudge had an MSNBC story that said that this week, like loads of the headline was in red saying that all these millionaires were in their private jets leaving New York. But then you go to click on the story and it was taken down. So I was like, okay, well, what does that mean? I think people are fleeing New York. It's out of control rent wise. You can't afford it. It's just so crazy.
Well, if you look at it from a practical standpoint, okay, if I'm in a business and whatever it is, say I'm being paid $10 million a year, if I live in New York is going to seize, at least 25% of that is going to go to New York, maybe even 30 or 40%.
Yeah, it's going to be more.
So why would I not want to move to Florida where they're not going to seize any of it?
So far.
Because we don't have state income tax, right?
So that's crazy. Did you see the ad? It was all of the Kennedy family came out in support of in support of Biden. I mean, poor RFK. I was like, well, I commented on X saying, well, I don't think he's talking to his sister now. Literally, the entire Kennedy, and plus they are not attractive people. I don't normally talk about looks, but they're not attractive people. And how embarrassing I feel bad for RFK because they're so worried he's going to take votes not from Trump, but from Biden.
Oh, I think that's exactly what that is all about. That is exactly what that's all about because the Kennedys want to maintain some form of Democrat. I don't know what the word influence is probably the best word to use, where they can have some influence on the Democrat Party, because RFK is not a party. He's just himself. He's running as an independent, and I think they want to preserve their status in the Democrat Party.
Well, so I wrote when your family ditches you,
Yeah.
And then somebody wrote, RFK just received the endorsement money can't buy. I just cannot believe that the whole they have a whole commercial. I saw them recently all at the White House, and the buffoonery of Biden. It's just every day. It is so horrific, and nobody. All the left, leaning media, they don't want to report on this, but it's out of control. And then the biggest endorsement this week was Attorney General, was it William Barr, that worked for Trump, hates Trump. Trump, anti-Trumper, came out and said he is voting for Trump. Because we can't live like this, destroying everything.
We can't, because there won't be anything left of the country. If another 4 years of Biden and a Democrat-run House or Senate, there's nothing left of this country. I mean, they were literally destroying.
I read a quote somewhere. Somebody said this week that it's national suicide what this man is doing to our country, or whoever's running. It's not him.
Well, the other thing that people don't remember is in 2025, very critical, all the income tax rates go back to what they were
my husband
prior
remembered
to
that.
Trump. Okay.
He remembered that on April 15th.
Yeah, you're gonna want to remember that.
It was already painful this year.
Well, that's one of our political cartoons this week. It's like you got these two people coming down the escalator. It says IRS on the wall, and it says, "How do we fix our tax system?" And the response was, "Change election date is April 16th." And I saw that.
Everybody I know and people that are not making high incomes paid a lot of money in taxes.
Yeah,
they paid a lot.
That's exactly the way I was.
Everybody commented that they've never paid this much.
Well, you haven't, and then you going through these tax forms, and I don't use a computer. I go through the forms and do them by hand.
Oh dear Lord, John, please join because it's already painful enough.
If you but you have to try to understand what this stuff's about. And I'm going through this one form, and of course, I get Social Security, right? So I'm going through the Social Security worksheet. It says, put down the number from 1040 line 20, in this spot, and
That's why you need to do it on the computer, because you can click it, it'll tell you what it's supposed to be.
Well, you're trying to figure out what all this stuff is. It says multiply line 10 by 85%, and then it's 0.85, okay? And then it says multiply whatever the answer was for the 0.85 by 0.15 and enter here. And then the next one is enter the smaller of line, 11 or 12. And I'm like, what the hell is all this about, All this stupid machinations. It's like, what's the point of all this stuff, Why can't you just say, put the number down and here's the tax on it? And then because I have a farm, and I've got tractors and mowers and seeding and all this kind of stuff. So now I've got expenses, on the farm. And of course I have to go through and depreciate the equipment. And I'm looking at this depreciation form. I'm like, are you freaking
Did you say
joking?
It has a seatbelt? Well, that's why you marry well, and your husband does it for you. But I know it was painful for him, and then he did my daughters too. So he's a saint. We have our own little CPA, office going over here. But no, I know people that don't make a lot of money and they were paying, and my husband did comment on that. He's like, oh my gosh, if we don't take the White House, those Trump, tax breaks, we are screwed.
The 2025 taxes are going to go up dramatically.
Yet he comes out and wants to pay off everybody's, college tuition,
right.
loans. And so that was a funny thing, because again, today, CNN, had a black woman on there, and when you have a $10 or $20 or $30,000 loan, it delays life choices of like having children or
right.
Buying a house. I'm like, nobody's paid for my stuff. I'm tired of paying for everybody else.
And you know what the average income is of the people whose loans are that qualify for being relieved of the student loans? $150,000 a year is the average income.
Well, even Elon Musk commented, he just put "wow" on there when it came out to all this, and I said, could somebody please pay for my house and my car payment?
Right.
Because nobody gives me anything.
Well,
I have to work for everything, and I don't want to have to pay for your stupid basket weaving degree because you just decided to party that first year of college, and now you owe $30,000. That's not my problem.
Right.
So,
you're in college, you're an adult. You need to make adult decisions and take adult responsibilities. And it's too bad, So, when I took out student loans, years ago, but I paid them all off. I paid them off as quick as I could get them paid off because I didn't like paying the interest on them and stuff.
Well, I did love this story. Ilhan Omar's daughter suspended from college for involvement in an anti-Israeli encampment, which I didn't know she had a daughter. And I wrote, Omar raised an anti-American, just what our country needs, John.
Yeah. Well,
and that's somebody who probably wants me to pay off her damn loan.
Yeah, and that was we were just talking with Congressman Davis. That's one area that I kind of disagree with him on as far as the Middle East goes. I don't think there is a peaceable solution because I don't think any of the Palestinians are willing to accept Israel under any circumstances, ever. So this whole thing about two-state solutions and stuff, you're talking past one of the participants, and they're never going to go for it. It's like they've got their two-state solution. They got the Gaza. And the Israelis withdrew and said, here it is, do what you want with it. It's your land, do what you want with it. And we saw what they did with it. They transformed it into a base to attack Israel. That's what the Palestinians have done for the past 20 years. And we've paid for it. We've paid billions and billions and billions of dollars for it. The Saudis have paid for it. Everybody's paid for it. And instead of turning it into a tropical paradise or some kind of, Riviera on the Mediterranean, they turn it into a military encampment designed to attack Israel. So why blame Israel?
Well,
why not blame the people that did it?
Exactly. Well, because they forget about the atrocities at this point. Another little headline that made me smile was Joe Biden was left off Time's 100 most influential lists for first time in his presidency because he's a buffoon. So I've got a lot of traction. I wrote, finally, Time gets it right. Good job. Which I'm shocked because you'd think in this election that they would be, wanting him on the list as some more kabuki theater. This is so crazy. But I wrote also on X, every day's a Shiza show with this old guy and his team. Remember, too, his Shepherd bit Secret Service 25 times. They didn't care. Coke in a baggie in the White House from who knows who. Trans person goes topless on the White House grounds. Hunter's always there on a leash. And Transgender Day proclamation on Easter. What did I miss? So much craziness. I mean, every day. And that's
it's designed to tear America down. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to... That's what this whole thing, the Death to America crowd, they mean it. They're not joking, okay? It's not just political. They actually believe it.
Well,
and to me, it's like, the first thing they should do with every one of those Death to America people out there, if they're not a U.S. citizen, deport their ass right out of this country.
Yeah.
That should, I'm not taught, we should not be fooling around. And the problem is we keep fooling around. We won't do anything about it.
Right.
So, the stupidity of our government is just astonishing to me. And I'll get a couple of stories in the stack this week that really caught my attention. The first one was Navy seeks urgent replenishment of $1 billion. $1 billion.
That number is scary.
For countering Iran-led strikes in the Middle East. We are shooting missiles that cost $2 to $5 million a piece at drones that cost $10,000. I mean, this is insanity on I don't know what kind of level, but that's what we're doing. And then the Navy shoots all these missiles, and then comes back to we spent $1 billion on missiles to shoot down $100,000 worth of drones, and it's like there's something wrong here. Okay, people, do you not get something's wrong here? And so what do we do? Nothing. We do nothing except spend more money that we don't have. Print more money to buy missiles that we can.
It is funny. Even Trudeau's having a hard time because I didn't know what this was. So the headline was PM Justice Trudeau to introduce halal mortgage for Muslims in Canada, or halal, however they say that. Because I guess true Muslims are not supposed to take a loan out with interest.
That's correct.
He must need.
That is correct.
So he's going to make it zero so that they can get loans. And I'm like, wow, so they must be buying their homes with cash. What a concept, zero. But he must need to be buying, votes as well by doing this. And
so why does it just apply to Muslims? What about regular people?
Right.
Why is it? I don't. I
don't know. And Mr.
It's like being transgender. If I walk into a women's bathroom and take off my clothes and say, "Hey, I'm a trans woman," is that all it takes?
Well, everything's a mess. Like all of it. We don't have the munitions we need.
Because
nothing happens to Mallorca. Our borders being overrun every single day. I don't know. Conflict's still in Ukraine, but where's the peace envoy? I don't know.
Well, I think it all goes back to this lack of a moral foundation.
Yeah.
Is where go back to first principles. If you don't have a moral foundation, you can't make judgments about what's right and wrong. Mm-hmm. Because the only way to know what's right and wrong is to have a moral foundation. You have, either you believe in good and evil, either you believe in God or you don't. If you don't believe in God, then what do you believe in? That you're just a random, speck in the universe? Is that your mental philosophy? And then if that's the case, then relative truth makes sense. It's all based on how you perceive the world. That's what's true and not true, as opposed to believing in God and God-given rights, and then that comes down to if you've got natural rights. Now you've got a framework, and you have certitude of what the truth is. Then you can make a judgment call about you can make a moral decision about right and wrong, and that's where we've broke down in this country.
Well, you just walk around, and all these people with green hair, and the nose rings push me over the edge. They literally, and they have like devil horns. I can't even take. And I'm like, how is this attractive to the opposite sex or whatever's going on? It is not. And they're all wearing the manga Japanese cartoon character shirts. There's just no God anywhere. And I don't know how, and it comes down to all these broken homes too. So I don't know how we get God back when nobody cares, and I think it is the lack of morality that's causing so much of this, because they don't care. Oh, kill a baby, doesn't matter.
Well, they're not willing to recognize evil and all the forms that evil takes, and that you have to destroy evil. So that goes back to start with abortion. If you don't respect life, then if you think you're aborting a person, or you're aborting a tissue culture, as Obama likes to say. What is it?
So yeah, I know, it's awful. Did you see the Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch, I can't see his name.
Gorsuch
nukes Joe Biden's DOJ over the January 6 sentences. And
yes.
He listed multiple cases who obstructed congressional proceedings without receiving a 20-year sentence. And sit-ins at the trial, Kavanaugh protests, pulling a fire alarm, that was Representative Stupid Bowman, hecklers in the crowd for Palestine, mostly peaceful protests for BML, yeah, right. So I didn't know if you saw that, because I'm really hoping they do the right thing, and because we have all these people rotting in jail over nothing, and then people that burn down millions of dollars of buildings for BML get no jail time.
Yeah, well, it's back to inventing unique things there. It's this particularly this thing about interfering with official proceedings. That is so undefined and so unbound. It's you could apply it to anything. It's like the bridge people there. They're blocking the bridge, so that means that now the guy can't get to the. The representative can't get to the state house to make a vote, or the bureaucrat can't get to do their job, So now you're interfering with an official proceeding, and it makes the government this supreme being, basically, is what the government becomes. When you interfere with the supreme being, now you're liable to go to prison for it. And there was something else that I saw. I think it might be the Columbia protesters. This been in the news the past couple of days there.
Yeah.
The
covering their faces because they don't want us to know who they are because they're not brave enough.
But some of them that were arrested for interfering with an official proceeding. So, which I thought was interesting. So it's not just to January 6th that they're trying to apply this stuff. They're trying to apply it to all kinds of stuff now. And I think it's a very dangerous road to go down when you say the fact that you interfered with a government procedure or proceeding, that means you can't protest anything. Because every protest,
it's freedom of speech. You can say "Death to America," nothing happens to you.
Right.
So the standard on one side is like we're putting these people in jail forever, and on the other one is like, oh, not a problem. The one story that was in our stack was DHS confirms Laken Riley's alleged murderer was paroled into the U.S. illegally. So once again, this is thanks Mayorkas and Biden. A beautiful girl's life snuffed out by allowing this loser, into the country that should have been not here, should have already been deported. So, yeah, that story was painful, John.
Well, I'm glad to see that he was impeached. I was disappointed but not surprised that Schumer went over there and just basically said, we're not going to try him. They didn't even listen to anything the House had to say. They just unilaterally decided, this is political. We're not going to even bother with it. And back to be careful what you ask for, because if the Republicans get a hold of the Senate and the Democrats are running the House and Trump gets elected, I guarantee you they're going to impeach him again and again and again. And what they ought to do the Senate, the Republicans ought to just say, and this isn't Mitch McConnell because he won't be the leader anymore, but whoever the leader is hopefully has enough cojones to sit there and say, you can impeach Trump all day long. As soon as you bring the charges over, we're just going to table them. We're not even going to look at them. We'll just table them. That's the precedent that your Democrat Senate set for Mayorkas, and that's the way they're going to treat you.
And we know it was fake with Trump. So, right. What does it mean? The other story that was, I sent it now to my husband because it cracked me up, that the Marine Aviator of the Year was a drone pilot. and all of the fighter pilots wet their pants. Okay, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if you aren't involved in the military, a drone pilot is not a fighter pilot or a heavy pilot or a helicopter pilot. You're sitting in a chair like a video machine, and you're not going to crash and die and burn. So what the hell? They're trying to equate it, John, to being a real pilot. I mean, I respect drone pilots. When they were coming online at the beginning of around 2000, I used to do when I worked at Nellis Air Force Base, Creech Air Force Base is where all the drone stuff was happening. Yep. And I did multiple VIP tours with leading congressional leaders and military leaders to educate them on the importance of what drones can do. I love drones. They're important. Nobody's in harm's way. But you are not a freaking real pilot.
Right.
You would take it away from a real pilot flying $100 million F-22. Give me a break.
Well, first off, a
bomber for 33 hours. I just saw some B-52 mission that they flew, and it was like, they normally have, companion crews, but it was like a 33-hour mission. Yep. So give me a frickin' break.
We went out on a P-3s, going out on a 14-hour long mission was not unusual. We usually go out during our deployments, 10 to 14 hours.
Yeah. My husband's flown in an F-15 for 10 hours over Operation Northern Watch to ensure that Saddam wasn't flying. 10 hours with no bathroom. You're 6'3" trapped. You can't get up. I don't even know how he did it because I can't, just doing the show, I'm like, that's a long time. I wouldn't make it 10 hours.
But the fact is there's the danger factor also. The fact flying military is very hazardous. Okay, the outcomes, you read the accident reports, the outcomes are not always really very good. You don't get out. P-3s, we didn't have ejection seats. You either bailed out or you crashed into the ocean. Those were your only two options if stuff went wrong. So it's a dangerous thing. But the drone guys, they just they're in this little building, and
it's nice, and you can come and go, and you can go potty, and you can have your drink there, and I did it for
and it's
years.
it's all antiseptic, to me it's like you're in this box, you're playing a video game. You're in a box playing a video game, okay? That's what a drone pilot is. And the fact that I don't even know why they wear flight suits, okay?
Well, come on.
The reason we wore flight suits,
it's comfortable. A really good drone movie is that
the reason we wore flight suits is because of fire. They're made out of Nomex, okay? There's a purpose for flight suit, okay?
Right.
It's not just to look good, but it's made out of Nomex so that if you get into a fire,
and then when they used to hang in my laundry room, my husband's 6'3", and so these things were like huge. I always thought they were like Dementors out of Harry Potter's book because I would occasionally scream because they'd scare me.
Yeah.
No, but a really good movie is called Eye in the Sky with it came out in 2015 with Helen Mirren, and it was one of the Harry Potter actors is in it, and it's an excellent movie about being a drone pilot, but it's not like being a real pilot. And No. Sorry.
The only reason that they have military
pilots must be mad in the Marines. I'm telling you.
Well, they should be. They should be. But the only reason that you have a military officer pilot, quote pilot, on that drone is because when you launch a weapon, it has to be an officer launching the weapon. Okay.
Well, and
you can't have the contractor.
People that are drone pilots want to be fighter pilots, or when I was working drone issues, a lot were real fighter pilots that came and did this for a couple years because the Air Force needed them to oversee it. Plus, you kind of want somebody, with combat, tactical fighter skills, whatever, that can think in a warfare mindset, kind of leading this mission here. So, oh my goodness! But yeah,
and the fact is, most of the drones are flown and operated by contractors. It's not the military. It's the contractors basically run the programs for them. And so I just have a basic problem here with giving Aviator of the Year to a drone pilot.
No,
I mean it's not aviation. Okay, it's not aviation.
It's video gaming is what it is,
right?
So
they should get the Video Gamer of the Year award, maybe not pilot. Pilot is the operative word, okay?
Well, the other story I wanted you to brief everybody on of importance was the Boeing. I'm trying to find it here in our stack. What's the title of that one? The Boeing story. You're on cold meds, and I can't find it.
What we learned from the Boeing hearings, yeah. Of course, the Congress has to get involved in the Boeing mess over there. Yeah. So they call Boeing on the carpet, because they want to pass legislation to fix Boeing's safety problems. And Boeing's you can't legislate a business problem. Okay, let's start with the fact who is Boeing, the modern Boeing. The modern Boeing is a financial services operation, okay? They are about cash flow. They are about money. They're not about building airplanes as a sideline for Boeing, for their executive management. It's all about cash flow and money. That's the bottom line. And when you deal with large corporate, and it's firsthand experience dealing with large corporations versus small business, okay? Large corporations, you've got like 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 layers of management between the people that are on the bottom line actually doing things like, screwing in a screw or changing a light bulb, whatever, and then the CEO level up there. About 3 levels from the bottom, everything above that becomes corporate management where the people have zero direct involvement with whatever the end product is. They're not down there designing it. They're not writing the software code. They're not down there, painting or polishing or cutting a hole or whatever. So they're disconnected from the actual product that the company sells. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes financial games. It becomes, the managers. What's your manager's? The manager is given a goal by the CEO. Says we need to grow the company 10% next year. Okay, doesn't say how. It just says we need to grow 10% because that's what our investors expect. That's the money aspect. And so that gets filtered down, and you're sitting there 3 tiers down, and say, all right, we're gonna do a 10% growth next year. So he goes down to all his sub managers and just passes that down. Says 10%, and then you get down to the level where you actually have to do the 10%. It's like, well, that's pretty damn hard to grow 10%, because you said we had to grow it. It's like our customer doesn't have 10% more money. We don't have. We're already in a market that's saturated.
Well, and I've toured the Boeing plant out in Seattle, and to make an aircraft takes a really long time. The order is like from a couple years prior.
Yep.
So how do you add 10% to that when you've already had people pay for stuff? And,
right, exactly.
You can't change that.
You can't change it. The market is what the market is, And
right, and somebody's paid you $1 billion to deliver however many airplanes, and now you can't go, oh, Bidenomics, it's got to be $1 billion, $2 billion now.
Right, but it all goes back to the economic incentives for each of the management levels. And the management levels are, if you can't grow, one way to grow 10% is to cut your cost so that your profits go up, right? So if you can find cheaper parts or do less labor or whatever, that's the other way to get your growth is quote, through efficiencies. And that's what Boeing does. They go out there and they say, all right, well, we're gonna cut the QA staff, because we've got procedures in place that take care of the QA.
QA is quality assurance. We don't want to be cutting quality insurance, especially from what we've seen lately.
And that's how you miss things like, they didn't bolt the door in when they put it back in, they didn't bolt it in because nobody went back and checked behind them to make sure the door was bolted in. That door that came off was exactly that. There were Boeing employees took the door off, unbolted it, took the bolts off, took the door out, let another company do the repairs, and then somebody from Boeing put the door in and didn't put the bolts in. And nobody from Boeing came back and checked on it. The quality assurance people did not come back and check the job was done right. And there's no documentation.
We're not focusing on what we need to focus. So I know we need to do a rapid fire round, John.
You can't pass legislation to fix that, Veronica. That's the point. That's the problem with Washington. They think they can pass a law that says fix your quality problems. You can't do that.
No,
you
have to already have a good quality organization already with the right people. But this story just is breaking. A high school soccer game at the public field in New York City was canceled after 30 illegal immigrants from Africa who spoke very little English refused to leave the field even after the police showed up. When one of the coaches, Eric asked them to leave the field, 4 of the 5 illegal immigrants told him, who don't speak English, "You know what, F it, we don't have to leave. We can do whatever we want." Well, they sure didn't know how to speak English on that. To try and resolve the issue, the police asked the coach for the club team's city permit, but they had it in email. It took 30 minutes to get there, and at that point, they were feeling nervous. So even when the game's over, you don't know if these illegals are waiting for you. So even if the cops kick them out, it may not be over. So we just all agreed this is too dangerous. So parents were rattled. This just happened. And guess who's in charge? It's the illegals. So I wrote, Americans never the priority anymore. This was kids were supposed to play a game, American kids, and they couldn't even play on the soccer field. Is this every day? Every day we have this. Well,
we live in a lawless society, unless you're a targeted political person.
Wasn't this
we're a
week
lawless
that
society.
DeSantis signed the squatter bill, so you can't be a squatter officially in Florida anymore, which is great. I wanted to hit real quick, the Gulf Coast Salute Air Show is coming. I've lived here 10 years in the Panhandle. We've never had one over the water. It's May 4th and 5th, so I'm going to see if I can get the wing commander, who's been a regular on our show. And if you've never seen one, and especially if you have a boat, oh my gosh, come to the Panhandle, Panama City Beach. And they actually do the practice show. That's probably the one to see, because when I worked all the time doing air shows in Vegas with the Thunderbirds, the practice shows when we would have all the VIPs come, and it was just always amazing to be out there. And oh my gosh, we'd have so much fun after the show, John.
I think you see more at the practice show. To me, the low level stuff, and I remember seeing the practice show up when I was up Pax River, Maryland. A long time ago, because it was an F-14. The F-14 guy, he had a practice session, okay, and he was doing some stuff that he wasn't going to do in the show because he knew his only audience was a bunch of Navy guys that were sitting there
it's
on the line.
Normally the VIPs when I was in Vegas, and my favorite air show ever, because I would do air shows with 150,000 people. This one particular air show I worked, the Red Bull organization set up a full-on bar on the flight line with the girls in their cute little Red Bull outfits, pill tops. That was the first time I had a diet Red Bull with whatever it was, vodka, and I was up for 3 days. So I'll never have. That's the only time I've ever had a Red Bull. But so much fun back in the day. But I do encourage everybody to come out for that. Coca-Cola is a sponsor, and that's great. That does show we're coming back on track.
Yeah,
and I'm trying to.
And they're even going to have an LCAC demo. Talk about something that's different.
I don't know what that is. What is that?
That's a landing craft. It's a hovercraft that I've worked on for 40 years.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
I'm presuming they're going to drive one by, probably about a half mile offshore or something, but driving by it. maybe at 50 or 60 knots.
Well, the F-22 demo, I've seen it 5 million times, is breathtaking because that thing can just, float in the air, go backwards. So if you've never seen an F-22 demo, I highly recommend it.
But the whole air show is worth the F-22 demo. It really is.
Oh, it's literally, it's eye-watering. It's so incredible. But we got, so May 3rd, the practice show, everything's 10 to 4. May 4th, May 5th here in the Panhandle. We got everybody to come out. I'm trying to see what we missed. I did a big event this week because I'm people hire me to do things because I'm a public affairs and protocol, I say goddess, John, and so I got hired to do an event for a billionaire, Francis Greenberger, and he belongs to Time Equities, and so I got all the press there, got all the VIPs there, made sure it was perfect because he invested $50 million here in the Panhandle. So it was a stellar event. And he's got a book called Risk Game. So I think he's worth $4 billion. His company's worth $6 billion. And then he took all of the team that put this event on for the launch of this property to dinner. And so I actually got to ride with him in my car for 30 minutes because everybody thought he needed to be with me. And so I cannot wait. And I've got his book. I've been reading the book. How do you become a billionaire? What's important to you? And one of the things he said in the car with me was that, having great employees that have allegiance to you. And when you reviewed his employees, many of them had been with him for 18 years. And like his first book or his first building he made in Manhattan was called 50 West. And the trials and tribulations of making, it's probably like, it's probably a $400 building now, million, but 20 years ago it was like $150 million. Just all of that, success and hard work. And, his dad had a literary firm. And so I cannot wait to talk to him about that. So I'm working to schedule him. And then our next big show, we've got the CEO, president of the Bay County Chamber, Patrick Chapin, and he actually was one of the speakers I recruited to do my event. So it was kind of his first launch out into our county, and he was just so pro, growth and expansion, and was wonderful. So I can't wait to host him. And then you and I have an interview this week with Donald Howe, and he's the President and Chief Financial Officer of the Southern Sky Aviation new FBO. What does FBO stand for again? I can never remember.
Fixed-based operator.
Yes, so they've planted, how much did you say? I read 25 million. You said 34 million?
I was talking to the general manager out there a couple days ago, and I swear he told me they spent 34 million on that place.
And that is, host all the private jets because the growth in our region, we're located in the Panhandle with 30A, and it's the playground of the rich with all these incredible mansions and 5-star restaurants, which I'm going there tonight for dinner because it's so good. So we'll have him on, and I'm trying to see, I've got some big guests always booked, and I just can't wait because the shows are just so incredible. But I had such a great week, and CFO Petronas actually, I always ask big people to come and do things for my events, and political players can never concentrate till 2 days before. So 2 days before my event, they're like, Veronica, he's coming, go, go, go. So he was my big headliner, and I joked with that where the CFO goes, the press will follow. So I knew all the press would come easily, even though I'd been working them for a couple weeks. So that was wonderful, and he was very gracious, and he actually did a whole Veronica PSA that he was impressed with my event, and I got the whole world there before he gave his riveting words. But yes, and like I told all the people from New York, I said, this is our future governor. And so they were just, because we've had him on the show, and he's been cleared to run for governor after DeSantis, and we really need him to run for governor because I think he's the right guy, and he gave a very impassioned riveting words about this $50 million endeavor. And of course we would like the billionaire to bring more money to our town, of course. So
get out of New York and come to Florida, that's where the growth is at.
And then this week too of working out, so I am moving a little bit, John. It's hard to get back into it.
well, that kind of brings up one of the stories we had in the afterburner was all about the Wegovy, Ozempic,
I wanted to talk about that. That's right.
Stuff.
Because working out is no fun, I have to say.
Yeah, exactly. People don't want to work out, so they're taking these what are diabetes drugs, and that just happen
to be $100 a week.
Yeah,
I know plenty of people have lost so much weight on it, but that's like the easy way out. Because the news story too, John, is that they're so concerned, like Jessica Simpson, this guy named Scott Disk that was a Kardashian daddy, like they're so gaunt now. That was the story that came out yesterday, because they've gone to the extreme. Even like the Queen of Belgium, who's always been a beautiful woman that was thin, now she's like mega thin. She never was mega thin because they're all doing it.
I know, and you see people and you're like, look at them and like, are they sick? Do they have cancer or something? I mean, they look so. They're gaunt looking,
thin, and now they're looking anorexic. Like Sharon Osbourne. Oh my gosh, she looks horrible now.
But the problem is, Veronica, is there's side effects to these drugs.
Yes.
And you can't get off of them. If you get off of them, you gain back all the weight. Okay. I mean, that's what these studies are showing. It's like, you're on this forever.
Okay, well, I'll stick to the damn gym. It's been hell.
But the list price on this stuff is like $1,000 a month.
No, I know people, they pay a couple $100 a week, and
the insurance companies are not covering them. The insurance companies left and right are dropping this stuff.
Which is so funny, because a lot of the people I know were very overweight and lost, anywhere from 50 to 150 pounds. And you'd think you'd be healthier by losing this weight, because if you're on high blood med, cholesterol, all that stuff, diabetes, that you think that would be a good thing for the insurance companies.
Well, the problem I have was to me, it's off label. Okay, that number one. Except I think Wegovy's actually approved as weight loss, but Ozempic and I think Jardian are diabetic drugs. But the fact that the insurance companies are dropping coverage of the drugs. So if you're a diabetic and you need these drugs, and the only reason I say this is because my sister is on Ozempic, and she does have diabetes. She's got type 2 diabetes. That's why she's on it. And it's like, she's having a hell of a time getting them to cover the drug cost.
Oh,
because she needs it for medical. She needs it for medical purposes, right?
Okay.
Not weight loss. And so, but they're throwing it all into one big pile, because what's coming back on is saying the federal government is sticking their nose in it and saying you can't discriminate on the drug coverage. Either you cover the drug or you don't cover the drug. Mm-hmm. So the fact that it's being misused for weight loss, if you want to look at it that way, is impacting the people that actually need it for medical purposes. And to me, it's like there's something. I know the drug system, the medical system is all broke, but it is something. But I just don't understand why these people are getting on the drug. The side effects are pretty horrible. The influencers, I was reading this yesterday, they're the influencers on social media are being paid to promote these drugs.
Well, but they look too skinny. Jessica Simpson was already skinny and pretty, and now they're starting to look anorexic. So that's the problem, is that...
But they're not talking about, the side effects, the migraines, apparently vomiting
diarrhea,
is fairly normal. Yeah, diarrhea. Yeah,
yes.
Exactly.
And
that's normal. And it's like, why people want to live like that is just beyond. But as soon as you stop taking it, you're going to get the weight back, So it's change your lifestyle. You want to lose weight, change your lifestyle. Okay,
John, I'm in the
change
gym.
How you and go to the gym.
It's horrible. Okay. I love the easy route, but like you said, that's not going to do it for you,
If you want to make it permanent, change your lifestyle. That's how you do it. That's the right way to do it. But
we've had a tremendous show. We've got some excellent future guests ahead of us, and I hope you feel better, my friend.
I do too. I think the worst is over, so hopefully it'll
Okay.
It'll get better here over the next week or two.
All All right. Well, we thank Representative Griff Griffitts. All of our guests today were Veronica Live regulars and former Congressman Geoff Davis, who was from Kentucky but resides in Florida. And everybody was brilliant. So we're fighting the fight for America, and November matters. So be sure to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and X. And all the podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, Podcast Addict, YouTube. I post a lot on LinkedIn, but I still haven't recovered my account because I was so busy doing the billionaire event this week that I'm still working on my LinkedIn. And but yes, it's been a great show. And if you'd like to sponsor us, DM me on X, and we want to grow the show because we truly, it's been 3.5 years of the most incredible guests, John. We are so blessed.
I know.
Blessed. So. Anyways, check us out. You can also hear some of our prior interviews on all those podcast platforms. And have a blessed week, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Veronica Live out.